Welcome into the Tuesday, July 22nd edition of Blue Sky Live. I'm Neal McCready, coming to you a little later than we normally do each day. I'm by myself this week. Chase on vacation. Chase Parham on vacation at Disney World in Florida. So I taped a couple of interviews earlier today. Bring those to you in today's show. Have this up in podcast form as well a little later in the day as well. So today, a lot of forewarning. I learned a trigger warning on this. There is some NBA talk in today's show. A couple of guests who covered the NBA. We talk about other things as well, but we do talk some NBA. If NBA just is a no-go for you, might not be the show for you. Maybe you can listen in podcast form. You can skip around. Again, I'll have that in audio form. I talked to Rylan Stiles. Rylan covers the Oklahoma City Thunder for Locked On Thunder, also part of the OKC Dream Team. Sports Illustrated. So we talk about that with him. Mostly at the beginning, though, we talk about his fandom. He's a huge Tennessee fan, grew up Tennessee family, lives in Oklahoma. So we talk about the Vols. We talk about the Sooners. We do talk some Thunder. We talk about coverage, providing coverage. We talk about podcasting, some things of that nature. So I think it'll be a fun interview with him. And then after that, Ti Windisch covers the Milwaukee Bucks. For the Gyro Step Podcast. He's also a big part of BlueWire podcast, which is our podcast partner that we use, BlueWire. So we talked to Ti. He's based in Milwaukee. We talked about the Bucks. Talked about the Milwaukee Brewers, who took a one-game lead yesterday in the National League Central. The Brewers right now have the best record in all of Major League Baseball. About 100 games in, week or so away from the trade deadline. Stretch run in Major League Baseball. So we talked some baseball with him. A little bit of Wisconsin Badgers football at the end, but not much. Have a big football show coming to you tomorrow. Ryan Brown is going to join, part of the next round. Talking to him later today. I'll get that to you in podcast form, in stream form at some point here in the next 24 hours, hopefully tomorrow morning. Got work being done at my house. I don't know how loud it's going to be, so we'll see how all of that plays out and then go from there. But this is a show that's brought to you each and every day by Blue Sky. Go to Blue Sky on your way in or out of wherever you live, in or near Mississippi. You'll be glad you did. You can fill up outside at the pumps. Then you can also go inside. Great snacks, beer selection, plate lunches, ribs, both dry and wet. Always clean, always polite. Everyone's going to be nice to you at Blue Sky. It's always going to be a great place to stop on your way in or out, or just your way on your everyday as you fill up as part of your work routine. So Blue Sky locations throughout the state of Mississippi. I'm coming to you from the Clark Ford Studios. Clark Ford's in Amory, Mississippi, 662-257-1900. Call that number. Ask for Corey Clark. Tell Corey what Ford product you're looking for. He'll send you a quote within 15 minutes in business hours, right to the bottom line. No hassle, no haggle. You get your quote. The rest is up to you. You can shop that quote around. You can do what I've done, what I recommend that you do, and that's hop into a Clark Ford today. 662-257-1900. Guests, including both Rylan and Ti, join on the Campbell Clinic hotline. From fractures and sports injuries to complex spine and limb conditions, the pediatric orthopedic physicians at Campbell Clinic in Oxford are the only specialized pediatric orthopedic team in North Mississippi, providing expert care for growing bodies. Visit CampbellClinicOxford.com to schedule an appointment or call 901-759-3111. And we're brought to you by Comer Heating and Air, Southern Air Conditioning and Heating, different names, same great people, products, and services. If you live in Oxford, Batesville, Tupelo, or the surrounding area, call Comer 662-801-1777. If you live in Hernando, South Haven, Memphis, those areas, call Southern 662-429-4429. And we're brought to you this month by our friends at New Albany Pharmacy and Solutions, located at 140 Fairfield Drive in New Albany. You can contact them at 662-539-7777. New Albany Pharmacy and Solutions is a family-owned pharmacy, excellent service, and a wide range of gifts for all ages, as well as home decor, jewelry, and more. Tell them you heard about them on MPW Digital. You get 15% off any non-medical purchase. So with that, we'll go to the Campbell Clinic hotline and Rylan Stiles. Rylan Stiles covers the Oklahoma City Thunder and the NBA for Locked On Thunder, Locked On NBA. He's the lead writer for Inside the Thunder, I believe. You got a lot. You got a lot going on. Part of the OKC Dream Team podcast, which I goob out to on a frequent basis, especially during the NBA season. I probably listen to that podcast and your podcast virtually every episode. So it's a part of my running or walking or weightlifting routine. So I appreciate all of the entertainment that you give me over the course of the season, and thank you for being here on MPW Digital.
Man, it means a lot to be here. I feel the same way about you with, Tyler, and also your election coverage this season. I'll just say top tier, but we want to get into all that today. But yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I've had people say you shouldn't do all that election coverage, and I was like, you know what? You only live one time. I'm not trying to impress everyone. I'm not trying to befriend every human on the planet. It's not possible. It would be great if the world worked that way, but it doesn't. And so, the show with Josh Hendrickson, where we talked a lot of elections and Ike Fessler and stuff, whether people agreed with it or not, I will say, and we all work in the analytics business, analytically, those shows did extremely well. They had a ton of reach. So, it was just something I don't know about you, but I've never wanted to be shoehorned into, oh, he's just a guy that covers Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Even though from a career standpoint, it might be beneficial for me to just be, oh, he just covers Ole Miss. He's just locked into the Rebels constantly. And I for whatever reason, I've just never really wanted to get shoehorned into that, because you never know where your career might take you. And believe it or not, some of the podcasts that I've done on the election and stuff did sort of lead to at least a conversation in the last year about doing something completely differently. So which led to something interesting. I mean, at least it was a couple of interesting conversations with people. So, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I mean, it was great just to see you kind of dive into that. And I mean, I think that you've done a great job of not being shoehorned into anything, but also growing out MPW Digital and having your avenues where, like, if you only want Ole Miss stuff, you know where to go. If you only want college football stuff, you know where to go. And if you're okay with other stuff, you can also go get it there too. Like, I like that you don't cross-pollinate while also not being, shoehorned into just one thing.
So while we're kissing each other's ass, I'll tell you this part. One of the things I really admire about you, and this is an inside baseball thing, I think probably. I'll never forget. It was one of the years, I want to say it was like 2004, 2005. I was in Mobile, Alabama, and I was working at WNSP, and it was Christmas Eve, and I had to do 3 hours by myself. It's the first time I'd ever done radio by myself. And I was petrified. I was just terrified. I was lining up guest after guest after guest after guest after guest. And I was telling my producer, Isaac Vasquez, on the other side, I was like, hey, man, you got to get these people on. I want them queued up. I want them ready. I don't want 1 minute of having to fill dead air. And it's a fear that lives on today. I do some solo podcasts now, and there's not a single one that goes by where about 5 or 6 minutes in, I can feel this like pit of panic right here. Like, oh God, this is horrible. And you're just talking to yourself, and this is bad. You should just abort. You should kill this right now. You do that Locked On Thunder almost always, at least it seems to me, where it's just you. And you're just talking, and it's as if you're having a conversation with the people, which is the way it should be. You're like having a conversation with the people. I'll be out walking, and I'm listening to your show, and I catch myself almost sort of responding. And I'm like, oh, he's not really talking to you, dumbass. He's just talking to like this audience. Has that been a natural thing for you, or is that something you had to develop?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously helped growing with repetition and everything, and doing it more, doing a daily show where you get more comfortable doing it. But it's just always trying to have that open-endedness. And whenever you're a solo host, you also have your own viewpoints, but you know that you can't neglect the audience in the sense of, if you had two people there, someone could be countering what you're saying. So kind of addressing that other side and then tying it back into what you believe in, to kind of make it cohesive in that way. But yeah, that is something that I'm really glad that you feel, because I want it to feel that way, where it's like a call and response, even though you can't literally talk back to me, but it feels like an open conversation with everybody listening, and we're all just talking about the Thunder together.
Yeah, you guys were having a conversation. You do it on your other shows too. You and Schlecht were doing a show the other day where I guess y'all were taking Reddit questions or something.
Yeah.
And one of the questions was who gets more, playoff minutes, AJ Mitchell or Nikola Topic, and I was like, oh, AJ, and immediately you were like AJ, and then the conversation was about who Wiggins or Aaron Wiggins or AJ, and I was like, huh, that's pretty interesting. I'm walking around, I'm talking out loud to myself, and I'm like, you're an idiot. They're not talking to you, but I think when you can get that response from an audience where they feel like they're with you, you've achieved like peak podcast or radio content, because now people, they're not going to leave. They're not going to check off if they think that you're in the car with them or they're sitting in the studio with you or wherever. If it just feels natural, they're going to hang around.
Yeah, that's been the biggest thing, is having that natural sense of togetherness. And I mean, just little things like I've tried to incorporate, like our show, even though it's only a solo show, but it is all of our shows, because without everyone listening, including you, Neal, like the show doesn't work. It doesn't allow me to have a job. So it is kind of all of our shows together. So I really appreciate that.
Okay, so you're a Tennessee fan. I guess catch people up a little bit on your background. How did a Tennessee football fan end up in Oklahoma City covering the Oklahoma City Thunder?
Well, it's just really the military. I mean, I'm from Lawton, Oklahoma, so it's the largest artillery base in the United States. And my grandpa was in the Army, and my grandpa, he got drafted into the Army, and they went to his house and they told him that he was drafted, and his mom answered the door and said he's already in the Army, like he's already signed up before he got drafted. So he obviously just loved being in the military, and so he got to Lawton for his last stop before he retired, and then decided to just retire there. And so he stayed in Lawton, and he's from Tennessee, and his whole family's from Tennessee. So he was obviously a huge Tennessee fan. And then I was still born in Oklahoma, but through him became a Tennessee fan and lived and died with some miserable Tennessee teams. My entire life, really, until Josh Heupel, they were terrible. And, so I fell for Jonathan Crompton, and I fell for Matt Sims, and I fell for all these guys who weren't very good, and still believed in them. Terrence Cody ripped my heart out 5 times in one game. So it just through family and having family all around Tennessee is how I became a Tennessee fan. But hey, it's worked out now with Josh Heupel. But it's been awesome to kind of learn about my family through Tennessee, and then you start listening to Tennessee podcasts and radio, and they start talking about towns where I've heard my whole life being talked about, and then hearing people on those shows like call in from places where my family's from, and then they sound just like my grandpa sounded, or just like my family sounded. It's kind of like an attachment to Tennessee in that way. Going to Memphis for the playoffs this year was pretty cool to be in Tennessee. So yeah, it's just family related, but I've always been from Oklahoma, and I haven't even been to a Tennessee road home game yet. I've gone to both games whenever they were in Oklahoma, including whenever they just got their behinds whipped when Justin Worley was out there twirling it. But they had better success this year. But the Tennessee football thing has been it's my biggest fandom in life is Tennessee football. It's the one area where I can just be a complete nut job fan, and I love it.
Yeah, we're going to circle back to that because we talked about this on when I was talking to you. I think it's vital. You probably feel the same way. I think it's important for what we do, I think, to not be a fan of or against the team that you cover. You can't be for them. You can't be against them. And sometimes when you cover people, it's easy to be for them, and sometimes it's easy to be against them because they're just bad. You have bad relationships. But I do think it's important somewhere outside, whether it's preferably in a completely different sport or whatever, professional or college or whatever, to have something that you experience fandom, because the people that consume your product are fans.
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, I think that whenever you're covering it, you've probably seen it throughout your years of doing this, but there's an area where someone is just an absolute homer and that they grew up being a fan of this team, and like this is an amazing thing for them because they're a fan. And then you've also seen it where it can go the other way, where someone wants to not be a homer so bad that they just look for ways to root against the team that they're covering and just be super, super negative because they think that the only objectivity is negativity. And instead, you just have to cover it as what's happening. Like there's nothing negative to talk about right now with a 68-win team that just won a championship in Oklahoma City. And you can say, oh, I don't know if this move's going to work out or not. But like at some point, you become disingenuous if you're just doing it for the sake of not trying to be a homer. And then it can go the other way too, where if you're just blindly talking all about these good things whenever things aren't going that well, then you're obviously a homer. So you got to find that middle ground, but you also have to know how these games are striking the fans. That way you can serve them what they need. And I think that that's what's let me kind of have some success of being this guy who is down the middle with Oklahoma City of just, yeah, they had a successful season this year, but I know that whenever they're almost losing to Brooklyn in Brooklyn, fans are freaking out. And I know why they're freaking out. And I can tell them, hey, I get it. I get that this feels terrible, but A, B, and C is why you shouldn't really care about this February game in Brooklyn, even though it feels like the end of the world. You should just relax a little bit because with Tennessee football, if they don't beat Georgia State by enough, and they lose to Georgia State, I'm losing my mind, and like every little thing is going wrong in life, if depending on how the Vols are doing. So you just can kind of still feel that connection to fandom, and it is hard, of course, to do it within the same sport. But I do think it's important to know what fans go through and to know what fans experience and be on the other side of it too.
Yeah, because your rational sanity in the Denver Oklahoma City series is pretty much what got me through it. And then I remembered you at the beginning of the finals going, Thunder in 7. Because I went into that going Thunder in 5. Hell, they might win it in 4. This thing's done. I was so confident. And then they blow game 1. And as it went on, I can't tell you how many times I was like, well, Rylan did say 7. That means you got to lose 3. You can't get to 7 without losing 3. And the losses create this panic. And like that was all I thought about after game 6 was, shit, 2 days. I got to grind through this. But, I mean, Rylan did say 7. And I remember thinking that. And then when they won in 7 kind of comfortably, which is sort of what you said would happen, one of the thoughts as we were being euphoric in our living room was, dude called this. He nailed this. And I'm sure you missed some too somewhere down the road, but you got that one. But I probably wasn't the only person that sort of leaned on that because that Denver series was a little scary. And there were some moments in the Pacers series that were pretty frightening. The Grizzlies series was nothing. And then frankly, the Timberwolves series there was never really any, even when they got blown out in game 3, I was like, they're not losing 4 times to these guys. And but Denver, yeah. And Indiana, there were some moments where I was like game 4, there were some moments in that series where I was like, Indiana's the better team.
Yeah, game 4 was, I mean, entering that fourth quarter, I was like, wow, okay, well, I think I'm going to be wrong in this whole series because it felt like they're about to go down 3-1. And even for as talented as the Thunder were, 3-1 is just impossible to come back from. Whenever you look at it, I know it's happened more recently in NBA history, but through the totality of the league's existence, that's not happened very often when you really look at it. And I think that, sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. I was right with Indiana, right against Denver. And then the Minnesota series, I thought was their most impressive series where they did win it in 5. And I thought that they would for sure at least play 6 games of that series, especially after game 3. But heading into the series, I was high on Minnesota, but it was a mature response to their blowout loss in game 3 to go win 2 in a row and get that series over with heading into the NBA finals. But it's just kind of that even keeledness, and it's hard to do whenever you're talking about it in a series because you're so used in like almost every other sport where it comes down, especially the sports that like Oklahoma City Thunder fans follow. They just follow football and the Thunder, and it's like you're used to every game means everything. Yep. And in basketball, it doesn't. In basketball, it's 82 games in the regular season, and it's 7-game series in the playoffs, and you're going to lose some. Whereas, like, if OU loses, then you are rightfully freaking out because it means the world has just came crashing down, and you can't act that way when you're watching the NBA. And so that kind of reminders of just the ebbs and flows of a basketball season being so different from football is something that still, like, the large-based audience is still coming around to, 15 years later.
All right, let's circle back to your Tennessee fandom. You said you fell for Jonathan Crompton. You fell for Sims. I'm going to assume that you fell for Nico Iamaleava.
Oh yeah, I fell for Nico. I was. It's funny because as you know, in that recruiting cycle, it's like Nico and Arnold, and I was around all these OU fans who were hyping up Arnold, and I was like, no, Nico's the guy. Like Nico's the chosen one, and then he lights it up in the first few weeks of the season, and they're just running this exact offense you'd imagine Nico being in. They're lighting up the scoreboard. He looks like a Heisman guy. He was the prince that was promised. And then SEC play starts, and it was just a complete shutdown of their offense. And they really won all these games and got to the playoffs on the back of their defense and Dylan Sampson. And it was really not much to do with Nico. But you thought, okay, year two, Nico's going to be ready. He's going to be more comfortable in the system. And then all of a sudden, before the spring game, he's no longer a part of the program. And you've basically pulled off a trade for Joey Aguilar with UCLA. It was the weirdest thing that I've ever experienced as a fan because of just the nature that it happened. I'm sure that it didn't catch as many Tennessee fans off guard, but it happens in the midst of the NBA season, like when it's just the hot and heaviest, and all of a sudden you look up and Nico's gone, like gone. And this is not just some negotiation tactic. That was crazy. That was a crazy experience to follow just as a fan, knowing how much that college football and college athletics have changed. I mean, Tennessee went through the Nico thing. They had a basketball player do the same thing, just like quit in the middle of the season and go to Texas instead, and willingly sit out a whole season to be at Texas. So it was just a weird phenomenon to know that we're in this new era of college athletics.
All right, so I'm gonna piggyback off that because you followed Tennessee for decades. You live in Oklahoma, which is a college football crazy state with the Sooners, Oklahoma State. It's a big college sports state. You're covering a sport, the NBA, that is incredibly structured. I mean, everyone talking about the first apron, the second apron. People talk about these things like they know what they're talking about, and they really don't. But the point is everything's very structured. You can get a max salary that is a specific salary. Your rookie scale deals that are specific. Everything's that way. Meanwhile, college athletics is sort of this wild, wild west that's trying to figure out a way to get structured. You've got a president that is talking about putting out a executive order to change the sport. I'm curious, from your perspective, how do you see college athletics right now?
I think it's a mess right now. I think that there isn't a way to clean it up. And I think that eventually, if you can just stick it out for right now and deal with the Nico drama, deal with stuff that pops up all throughout the college cycle, like you're going to be better for it as a sport. It just feels like it was all thrown together hastily in terms of like NIL, the transfer portal, trying to properly compensate athletes, but also not putting them under contracts. And you're doing like too much at once. Like you've loosened up the transfer thing, and like I mean, you follow this way more closely than I do, but to my knowledge, it all changed at once. Like the ability to transfer anywhere with no punishment, instead of like if you transfer in the SEC, you can't play in the SEC schedule, you have to sit out a year. Like that changed at once. Plus the payments changed, and it opened up this Pandora's box where now everyone basically plays on a half a year deal, and they can go wherever they want to and try to leverage these teams against one another. And it just creates this situation where, especially in football, there's just too many people to manage. Like you have 80 player rosters who can all try to do the same thing.
Yep.
And some players try to go for more money and a better opportunity. Some players just try to go for more playing time, which is understandable. And so you literally, from 1 to 80, it feels like you have to be re-recruiting your own roster on top of recruiting new players. And you might, for example, like with Tennessee, like you didn't think you'd need to get a ready-made quarterback this entire recruiting cycle until your spring game is whenever you knew that you for sure needed someone to replace Nico. And that just puts you so behind the 8 ball, where it's honestly just really difficult to keep up with. And I know that there's a lot of people around Oklahoma that are just like, you know what? I'm gonna root for OU, for example, no matter what. Whoever they put out there in that crimson and cream laundry, that's who I'm gonna root for. Wake me up game one, give me the roster on game one, and those would be my guys, and I'm done following it, even though my whole life I've followed every single recruiting tidbit there ever was, but now it's just too much to handle. And I do think it's in a very bad spot for the time being. But if they just make some common sense changes that you and Tyler talk about all the time, it can be so much better and can get back to closer to what it used to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. Tyler, I mean, not to go down that whole rabbit hole because I'll start lighting matches in here, and I'm starting to run out of matches. From a coverage standpoint, how to handle recruiting is this completely new world. When I started this with what was then Rivals.com, it was you covered recruiting breathlessly, the way you cover NBA free agency, but it's year round. I mean, if somebody's taking a visit, God, you must get that person on the phone. You've got to find out how the visit went. You've got to, if they commit, my God, you must have stories ready to go. With Ole Miss felt like home. It was amazing. Oxford's incredible. The coaches are awesome. It's family. Blah blah blah. Now it's like no. I shouldn't say no one cares. Only the hardest of the hardcore care about that. And yet you have to cover it, but you don't want to overcover it. And there's this weird spot. But you're right. I mean, I do think I'm with Tyler in that I think it's the unlimited transfer thing has created chaos. I do think if there was can you imagine the NBA if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander could just become a free agent every year? I mean, just imagine what that would be like today if the whole Thunder roster and the whole Clippers roster and Nuggets roster and everybody could just go, hey, I'm going to go see what's out there every year. It'd be chaos. Fans would check out because I don't know that they have the same loyalty as they do to, as you said, the crimson and cream and the orange and white. And there's a college fandom has, I think, a little deeper emotional tie to it that I think has carried them. But there are some cleanups. How you put that toothpaste back in the tube, though, is going to be interesting. It's where Tyler and I disagree. He's like, yeah, you just break away, and I'm like, I don't really think it's that easy. I don't think you just magically, break away. We're breaking away. I don't think it works like that at all.
And they just lack structure. I mean, they need the structure of, like, you either have to be the hardest of hardcore fans where you almost like devote yourself to the point where it's like,
hey, Rylan, can I hit the pause button 1 second? There's something going on outside my house that I need to check real fast.
Okay.
I was right, Rylan. Rizzo the dog was losing his mind downstairs, and I was right to hit the pause button. I was about to get in deep into the doghouse had I not moved my truck. So apologize.
I'm glad that you avoided that. I'm glad that Anthony Rizzo Jr. Made sure that you got your P's and Q's and T's and I's crossed and dotted.
Yeah, Rizzo the dog. Rizzo lasted longer than Anthony Rizzo's baseball career. Who would have?
Who would have thought?
Who would have thunk it? I mean, nobody would have wondered other than me. But there you go. All right, we were talking about college, just college sports in general. Going into, I know I probably paused you in the middle of a thought, and I apologize. What do you sort of expect from UT this year? What and then there's a lot of buzz around Oklahoma. I know that's not your team, but you're there. A lot of John Mateer talk for the Heisman. People are saying Oklahoma's the most underrated team in the country, et cetera, like that kind of thing. From what you know from being there, what are your thoughts on the Sooners and also the Vols?
Yeah, for Tennessee, I mean, there's a couple of ways to look at it. You can look at it through Tennessee-colored glasses and just say, well, their defense should be good again. Their defense should be keeping them in games, and they didn't have very good quarterback play last year. When you really break down what Nico did, in SEC play, he was almost like a top-of-the-line game manager, more so than a quarterback that went out and won you games. But replacing Dylan Sampson is where you can throw a wrench into that. Like that, I think the Tennessee fans who have these envisions of like 10-2 or better just because of Nico are forgetting just how electrifying that Dylan Sampson was. And I think that Peyton Lewis and Star Thomas and like the running backs that they have are good, but they're not Dylan Sampson good. At least they haven't proven to be Dylan Sampson good yet. They're going to try Boo Carter playing receiver and corner. And how's that all going to work out? I'm not so sure. It doesn't even seem like they want to put Boo Carter at receiver. It seems like he wants to play receiver, and they're just kind of tied because they don't want him to transfer. So they're like, okay, well, you know what? Whatever. We'll play at receiver too. And then you look at this Tennessee offense, and if Josh Heupel plays the style of football he likes to play, they don't sub receivers. They go fast. And so if you are going to play him at receiver, how are you ever going to get him off the field if you don't substitute? Or are you going to change your whole offensive game plan to try to manage his snaps? Or are you going to use him as a gadget player, which is then going to be pretty obvious when he's on the field to watch out for the number 23 cornerback on the field? It's going to be very interesting to see how Josh Heupel navigates this as a guy who's going to be billed as this quarterback whisperer, and this is kind of where he's going to make his money. Is just like, can you turn Joey Aguilar into a good quarterback, into a guy who doesn't turn the ball over too much like he did at Appy State? Can you lean on, Jake Metlinger, who's in your system as a redshirt last year and should have a pretty good grasp of how you want things done if it goes that direction? But you only have two guys, because I think that George McIntyre is very talented. He's 90 pounds soaking wet. How is he going to play in the SEC? He can't play as a true freshman. So you have two quarterbacks on your roster, neither one of which are proven. You've lost in your running back room. The receivers, I mean, last year, the receivers, I think, were overall more talented, but because of health, they didn't get to prove that they're more talented than this group. Therefore, I think that this group can equal their production if a guy like Mike Matthews really hits, and he's like the only 5-star receiver that Josh Heupel's gotten yet at Tennessee. So theoretically, he should be the most talented receiver that Josh Heupel's been able to recruit to Tennessee. They have a great tight end. I think that Kitzelman could be the X factor of this offense because of the bad quarterback play or expected learning curves in that room. This is just a safety net that tight ends typically are. I think that anything above 9 wins would be a huge win for Tennessee. It would be a massive coaching win for a program that, as you know, has it just in my lifetime alone ran off Philip Former. Lane Kiffin flew by night. Derek Dooley was a disaster and like talking about World War II more than football. And, Jeremy Pruitt was giving out money to guys that still couldn't win games. And Butch Jones was a disgrace. I mean, Butch Jones, if I have to hear about 5-star hearts one more time from Butch Jones, I don't know what I'm going to do. The fact that he still is employed in college football is a disgrace to the sport. I think that Arkansas State's AD should be fired today for thinking that Butch Jones could lead a program after seeing what he did at Tennessee. And so, that's the run. And that's the good news for Josh Heupel. That's who you're competing against. So if you just can turn in a 9-something win season with this schedule, you'd be looked at as a god and a statue worthy coach if you find a way to bring this out. And then you get in the top quarterback recruit next season. McIntyre maybe will put on some weight and be able to play as a guy who's very talented. So I think that this season, just pull off an upset, be 9-3. Now, you're not going to make the playoffs, but it'll still be a nice season, especially after the rightfully or wrongfully, the kind of emotional boost that the fan base has in Josh because he stuck up for the power T and he didn't cower down to Nico and the skirt wearing quarterback and pay him more money. I think that this is where it gets into the business side of college football. Would they be a better team right now with Nico if they would have just cowered down to him and paid him the money and let him have the program over a barrel? Yeah, they'd have playoff expectations right now and hosting a playoff game expectations right now if they still had Nico on their roster. But you guys all said in the fan base that you love that he stuck up for the power T. So then I don't think that you can harm him for making the team worse and not bringing back Nico. So I do think that a 9-win season would be very good for Tennessee. They're so talented defensively, they shouldn't lose. They shouldn't be worse than like an 8-win team, a 7-win team if everything went terribly wrong for them. So that's kind of his window. But I think that you would average it out to like an 8-win season for Tennessee, and you just hope that he pulls off an upset against one of the rivals. Especially you have Georgia. Whenever Georgia is coming to Neyland, and they've historically, from my following of the sport, they've been a better team at the end of the year versus they start kind of slow for their standards. So can you sneak up and get them? You've got to beat Syracuse. I mean, if they lose to Syracuse, all bets are off, but you've got to beat Syracuse, and I think that they can win 8 games, 9 games. But Oklahoma, I think that Brent Venables is coaching for his job just from knowing the expectation level of this fan base that's become very, very spoiled since Bob Stoops has taken over. I mean, this has been the worst era of OU football in my entire life, which is a credit to Bob Stoops, because whenever my dad and my family and friends used to try to tell me about the bygone era of OU football, I never believed them because my whole life it was just 10 wins plus for OU, and they were just this team that was competing every year. They went to the playoffs and they won a national title, and they went to the national title, and this has been dreadful. Like, this has been truly dreadful. They can't keep anybody healthy. They can't move the ball offensively. And it just kind of all snowballed on them, where they got the Lincoln Riley stuff, where they kind of made a hire that I think was based solely in feel good and not based in like winning football games. They're like, oh, let's bring back Brent and try to stabilize the program. And they made a terrible OC hire with Seth Luttrell after Levy left, and it kind of put them on this downward slope. But the year of the transfer portal, and you get Jim Nagy in here, and all of a sudden now people believe that Mateer is like Baker Mayfield 2.0. That's very high expectations for John Mateer, but I don't know that he can live up to it. But I do love Ott from California, their running back, and I do think that there is something about Arbuckle that he is truly a offensive guru compared to Latrell, who just run sweeps all game. So I do think that OU can be good. I think that they're being a little overrated in Norman right now. I think that it's a little unfair to expect them to be like a playoff level good, because even though Brent is a great defensive coach, they lost a lot of talent on that defense. And as you know, the defense wasn't the problem last year. Like, the defense is what allowed them to have frustrating games.
Yeah, they were solid on defense last year. Their defense gave Ole Miss fits for 2.5 quarters in Oxford. I mean, they that first half in Oxford last year, Ole Miss could not figure them out. They did just enough in the second half and got going. But I remember that game being halftime. I think OU led 14-10 or something like that, and I was like, man, this has a chance to get pretty nasty here if this doesn't work out, because that was on the heels of Ole Miss's loss to LSU. So
yeah,
everybody was
replacing Danny Stutzman and the leaders on that defense. Like, maybe Brent can just work his magic and figure it out and be really good defensively. But you have to expect that you take at least a slight step back defensively and at least a slight step forward offensively. That's not a playoff jump for OU the way that people are expecting, but it is a good enough jump to feel good about your program again. Whereas like right now, it just feels like everything's terrible until you made this big splash in the recruiting cycle this season. So I think that OU, they can, because their schedule, they can feel like a 9-win season is a success, and anything more than 9 wins would just be gravy on top of it. I don't know that Brent Venables is the guy to get them back to where they want to be, but I think he can be the guy to just flatline the program in a good way, of just make it to where you're not having these ups and downs, but eventually get things going steady. And then you bring in a guy who can get you over the hump when the time comes. But now you're losing your AD and you have to go through all of that rigmarole. I do think, though, that OU should be better. And now how much better, I think, is being a little bit oversold because of their schedule. But going to Neyland, for example, will be tough. I don't think that OU fans understand yet the rigors of an SEC schedule all the way, because last year it felt like they were beating themselves so much because of how good their defense was that they stayed in games. But it's going to be very tough for anyone to win on the road in this conference. So OU, I think, can be a 9-10 win season, and maybe 10 wins for them will be enough, depending on how the committee feels about it. But I do think that they can be a lot better, obviously.
How did Oklahoma City become such a basketball town when you're 20 minutes or whatever from Norman? You're not that far from Stillwater. Those are passionate football fan bases. I mean, the rivalry is called Bedlam, for God's sake. I mean, football matters there. How did professional basketball take off the way that it did?
Well, I think that they got lucky that they were good, like right away. Like by the time that the novelty wore off of like just having a pro sports franchise in Oklahoma, like that first year they were bad and they did not win games, and they got to draft James Harden because of it. But after that first year, when the novelty did wear off, then you just hit the ground running as just a perennial contender. You stayed a contender for the entire length of Durant and Russell Westbrook being on this roster, even though you never quite win a championship. And then you go through one season where you're just so mad at Kevin, but Russell Westbrook's your guy, and he re-signed, and he gave you an MVP season, a literal historic season, averaging a triple-double, and then you went and made the big splash for Paul George. And yes, that era didn't work out either, but that's a 10-year window of being one of the best teams in basketball in little Oklahoma, and it was just a rallying ability for the whole state to unite around one thing, and it kind of legitimized the state. It legitimized what they were building in this city, and you've seen it firsthand in your visits of just how much that the city has grown with Oklahoma City, with the Thunder. And so then it just became this rallying cry around the state, and the Thunder have done a great job of like being a basketball team that's located in Oklahoma City, but represents Oklahoma. And with their outreaches that they do with all the cities in Oklahoma, that they've really made it feel like it's everybody's team. But they just have to play their games somewhere. They couldn't play their games in every single county of the state. They just have to play their games in OKC. So like that's been a big deal. I think that another part of it is like OSU and OU basketball is terrible, and like they're just not very good. And so now you take away the need to try to support either program. And like as soon as football season ends, it's all about the Thunder. And like there is it hasn't completely jumped the shark with college athletics. Like you do see the analytics like jump once OU season is officially over and once OSU season is officially over. But once that happens, everybody turns their sights to basketball, and basketball has been a part of this state that I think has been underrated until the Thunder got here because everyone's always loved it, but they just had no way to express it because like OU and OSU basketball programs were never blue bloods and were never true contenders, but they still got support. And the thing about Oklahoma is just like it is exactly what you think about when you think about like southern states, even though people don't consider Oklahoma the South. It's just you look at them and you put any form of athletics in front of them, they're going to support it. If there's a ball and a scoreboard, they're going to go support and they're going to root on their team. So like that element has helped them a lot too. But it helps that they've been winners, and it helps that it's been the only form of basketball that people really invest in. OU and OSU have not been at that level, and now it's too late for them really to catch up. So as soon as football season's over, it's all about the Thunder, and as soon as the Thunder season ends, it's all about football, and it's just that it's that two-layer cycle really in this state now.
So I'll be mad at myself if I don't take the last few minutes here and ask about the Thunder. Would you have believed me 3 years ago? I said this team's 3 years from a title. Josh Giddey's a rookie. Shea's playing well. That kind of thing. If I'd said, hey, the basketball gods just visited and they said in 3 seasons, this team's winning the NBA Finals, would you have said the basketball gods are drunk, or would you have believed it?
I wouldn't have believed you, and I wouldn't have believed you honestly. Like if you go back to August of this season, of just heading into media day and training camp, you knew that this team could be good. You knew that this team could be contenders, but to actually win it with a guy in J-Dub who's your second option that is a historically anomaly. Like a guy in his third year should not be scoring 40 points in the finals and legitimately being your second best scorer to win a championship. It has all came together perfectly for OKC. And I think that you're doing yourself a disservice if you just treat this as an expectation because it kind of discounts what they did this season. It discounts how historic that they were, how this wasn't supposed to happen for them, how it was supposed to be too early. And I mean, from just following basketball, how many times did you watch basketball coverage that wasn't from the state of Oklahoma, and all they can talk about is nobody fears the Thunder, nobody respects the Thunder. They need to take their lumps
all year.
All year. And they were right. They were right because throughout the course of NBA history, you do have to fail. You do have to learn. But the thing about this Thunder team was that they were an anomaly because like the Thunder were supposed, like if you just look at the course of NBA history and you laid out what happened in that Denver series and they had just this dud of a game 6 where J-Dub has 6 points and it's just not good. And you look at how they handled that road game, they're supposed to lose game 7 and then learn from that and implement those lessons next time. But instead, this Thunder team learned from game 6, took 2 days off, implemented those lessons in game 7, and utilized that as a springboard for this current season. And that's what has been so jarring to watch is because the more you watch this team, the more you realize that all the coach speak that Mark has and this team has isn't just coach speak. They truly do take every game in a 0-0 mentality. They truly do learn the lessons of every single game and kind of reflect on these games and figure out ways to get better. And they're the best team that I've ever seen at implementing those lessons of not continuously making the same mistakes and getting over the hump within the same season. And that is hard to do. And that's why this season and this team was so historic, because you're not supposed to be able to learn on the job like this. And they got on-job training the entire postseason, and it ends up with a NBA championship. And that's what's been so awesome.
So, I mean, I'd love to talk about the championship for a long time. I know we live in the sports media world where everyone immediately turns to next. And it's been fascinating to me to watch the aftermath of a title because the same franchise that was crucified, and maybe rightfully so, for the way they handled the first iteration of the big three, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden. They go to the NBA Finals. They lose in 5 games to the Miami Heat, but they look like, hey, man, this team is here for a long time. They're going to win championships. Game 5 was James Harden's last game with the Thunder. They moved him. They traded him to Houston. And there's a lot of revisionist history with whether it was a good trade or a bad trade, because who knows if Russell Westbrook doesn't get hurt the next season in the playoffs. Maybe the Thunder win the title and everybody goes, oh, Sam Presti's a genius. A long time ago. But they didn't. They didn't win a title. Harden goes on to become a Hall of Fame caliber, MVP caliber player. The Thunder get just raked over the coals for that. This time, they go to the finals. They beat the Pacers in 7. They give Shai Gilgeous-Alexander the max. They give Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams at least versions of the second contract max. And immediately everyone goes, oh, that's a mistake. That's a mistake. You've committed all this money. You're going to be in the second apron. You're not going to be able to keep this team together. That was dumb. It's like, man, you guys are proving what people like me say all the time, which is you're just searching for a negative. You don't like this story. That's my opinion. I don't think the national media likes the Thunder. They're in Oklahoma City. It's not LA. It's not Boston. It's not Philly. It's not Madison Square Garden. Oh, shit. Because the reality is, by the time these contracts kick in, there might be a new CBA with a higher number, and they might not hit the apron. And even if they do, it's a franchise that's shown they'll pay the tax. They paid the tax during the first iteration of the Thunder, if you will. And they've got all these assets. They've got a lot of players, Wiggins and Caruso and all these players, AJ Mitchell, who I know is kind of your guy. They've got all these guys on very team-friendly deals that are, A, you could play them, you could keep those deals. B, those deals would be simple to move to create more assets. It's like a weird narrative that the national media has created in the wake of this championship.
Yeah, I mean, the national media does not. The NBA media is very spoiled, and you look at just how they cover things, and it just reeks of the NBA media more so than any other sport wants to be the story, and they want to be part of this. They don't understand that our role isn't to be part of this. Our role is to just cover what's going on. And so it's like you look at, for example, I went to the All-Star game in Salt Lake City and in Indiana, and people just raked it over the coals of just, oh, this sucks. I want to go home. This is brutal. And it's like, guys, the All-Star weekend is not a vacation. Like, you're getting paid to be here. You're being flown out. You're being paid to have a hotel. You're everything. You're getting a stipend every day for all your food. The NBA, for those of you that don't know, like, after every single event in the NBA All-Star weekend, they throw a party for you with an open bar on the NBA's dime. It's just, everything is taken care of, and they still hate it. They still don't like it. They don't want to be there. They want to get. They couldn't wait to get back to San Francisco for this year's All-Star and to LA next year for that All-Star, and to Phoenix, like to these cities that they actually like. It's like there is that level of spoiledness to them. And like, yeah, the finals went 7 games, and it was a quote unquote grind. That's another thing about NBA media. A lot of them have never actually like worked a job, and like they don't have anyone that has worked a job. Like, this is not a grind. Like, oh, I had to do 3 podcasts today. This is really tough. Like, yeah, guess what? The people listening to your podcast are building tires right now in a tire factory. Like, they're doing more labor intensive stuff than, oh, I got to talk into a microphone too much today. Like, the NBA media is so spoiled, and it's ridiculous. And like in the finals, people were like, I just can't wait to go home. Just end the series. It was a fantastic series. It had so many swings. It was great basketball. And yet the people covering the sport just could not wait for it to be over, to no longer have to be in Oklahoma City or in Indiana. So like it is very, very annoying. Like the way that the NBA media sphere treats it, like it's supposed to be some vacation whenever everything's taken care of for them. And they try to make it as much of a vacation as possible, honestly, with the events that the NBA puts on. Like, again, after the finals, every game, the NBA gave you an open bar and everything to the media. Like, they treat the media very well, and the media is just very disrespectful of that, honestly, and very disrespectful to the audience of just, like, guys, everyone would love to just have a job where they talk sports all day. Like, the reason why we have jobs is because sports fans love sports so much that they do our job at their job. Like, they just talk sports all day, and they want to listen to people talk sports all day while actually having to do their real work. And like, the point of privilege is lost on NBA media more so than any other media out there. And then you look at it from this standpoint too, is that they don't really care about covering what's happening with any sort of depth. What they know is that if they just say every team sucks, well, then they're going to be right about 29 teams. They're going to be wrong about one team, but they're right about 29 teams. So if every team makes the mistake, and every team is making bad roster moves, and every team is making bad decisions, they can point to 29 examples of them being right and only 1 to them being wrong. So that's why they kept discounting this Thunder team. It's why they keep discounting this Thunder team in the offseason, and why they discount every team in the NBA. Even whenever fans are like, well, all they talk about is the Lakers. Yeah, they bash the Lakers 24/7 because they know that they're not going to win, and then they can be proven right on that. They don't actually want to like have a firm opinion. Like if you really look at what the Thunder have done, what's the alternative? Oh, trade away one of the big three. Well, guess what? If Sam Presti traded away one of those guys this week, they'd be killing him. They'd be killing the Thunder for trading it away. So
they'd have called them cheap.
They call them cheap. It's like, so you're going to get killed if you pay them. You're going to get killed if you don't pay them. So then what do you think the right move is? But they'll never tell you that. They'll never tell you what the right move is because they don't want to have a take. They just want to bash what's actually happened. And when you look at the Thunder, they've spent years curating this salary cap sheet to where they won't hit the repeater tax, which the second apron obviously is restrictive. The repeater tax is the one that actually hurts you and the one that actually squeezes out your roster. They won't even hit that until the CBA is dead. Like the CBA is absolutely going to be opted out of by one side, absolutely the players and perhaps the owners as well, but for sure the players. And the time that the Thunder would hit the repeater tax would be after the opt-out date for the Player Association, and we have no clue what the next CBA will look like. And you would imagine after years of this CBA, the players are going to opt out and want the restrictions loosened on teams. And then you look like you're smelling roses, and they don't ever do the digging into, yeah, Chet Holmgren got the max, and the reporting around the NBA is all through agents. So the agents are going to tell you what the most amount of money that they could get is. Then you do some digging. Chet Holmgren's at 25% of the cap, no matter what he does. He's at 25% of the cap. Jalen Williams, his escalator is winning MVP.
Yeah. I mean, the Thunder.
If he wins MVP, you just take it and you say, hey, here's your money. Take it. Take all of it. You can take every single bit of money that you want, Jalen Williams. Have it all.
It'd be that gif of the cartoon character throwing the money out the window. I mean, it would just be like, here, Jalen, take it. I mean, because if you already have one MVP, if you have a second MVP, you're probably winning another title. I mean, and you're moving into a new arena and you've got all these revenue streams.
Yes. You're moving into a free arena. The Thunder put less money into that arena than you put into buying a pair of socks today. Like the Thunder did not buy anything about this arena, and they get it for completely free. The league's going to expand. The TV right deal is kicking in. Like there's all these revenues on top of, if you do a little bit more digging, the Thunder sit still to this day after completing their rebuild. They have 18 future second-round picks. They have like 15 future first-round picks. And what are draft picks? They're cost-controlled talent. So are they going to have to trade Kenrich Williams? Are they going to have to move on from Isaiah Hartenstein or maybe even Lou Dort? Sure, they might have to do that. They're for sure going to have to move on from Isaiah Hartenstein, I think. But guess what? You trust the best executive in the sport, the best drafter in the sport, to fill in on the back end. And that's what it's going to come down to. Like, people look at this all wrong. Like, the difference in the Thunder being a sustained contender is not Chet or J-Dub taking a pay cut, and it's not the fact that you can't win by paying those three guys. If the Thunder do not win and they do not sustain this, it'll be because they missed on every single draft pick and that they missed on all these opportunities to improve their roster on the back end. And even if you do that, Neal, who's been the winner of this offseason? The Denver Nuggets. People are fawning over the Denver Nuggets, including myself. I love Denver's offseason.
It was my next question. It was about who's positioned themselves best to spoil to stop a dynasty.
It's for sure Denver for this upcoming season. But you look at how we thought about Denver after their playoffs ended and the Thunder beat them in 7 games. Well, what are they going to do? They have 5.5 NBA players. They've missed on every single pick. Calvin Booth was a disaster. They just fired their GM. They just fired their coach. How are they going to improve this roster? They trade Michael Porter Jr. for Cam Johnson, and all of a sudden it unlocks them the ability to get 5 rotational guys. So you go from 5.5 NBA caliber players to now you have a roster of 10, 11 NBA players with Deron Holmes coming back from injury, and all you did was make one trade. It's like, you don't think that Sam Presti's going to be able to pull that off, but a temp GM in Denver could? Like, come on. Like, what are we talking about? It is just the sake of people wanting to be negative for the sake of being negative without actually having reasons or facts. There are negative things that the Thunder have done in the past and have done in this rebuild, but this is not one of them. This is not one of those things. I mean, like, they fell in love with Poku and they drafted Poku no matter what. And I think that Poku was a bad player then. I think he's a bad player today. But yes, do I think that Poku was a bad pick? It was a bad pick. it did let them lose games, which did let them kind of have the butterfly effect of what they turned into today. And they knew the calculated risk of, yeah, the Thunder didn't believe Poku would really hit his ceiling if you gave them true serum today. They didn't really believe that they could get Poku to be this unicorn 7-foot ball handler, but they knew, hey, worst case scenario, he's bad, we lose, and we get better players in the draft. And that was their first pick of this rebuild.
Yeah.
So it's just the lacking of nuance that I find very frustrating with NBA media.
Average player right there, and you end up, with the 9th pick instead of the 2nd pick. You don't get Chet Holmgren. You end up sort of being purgatory. You were better off sucking. It's the part, frankly, it's the part college fans can't understand, and I get it, because no college team ever goes, hey, we're going to rebuild by tearing this thing down. It's idiotic. It's nonsensical. It wouldn't make sense. Sometimes in pro sports, it's what you have to do. All right, so last thing, you mentioned Denver. Is it Houston? Is it San Antonio? Who's the other team out west that's caught your eye? And then is there a team in the East that has positioned themselves to be a threat?
Yeah, I think that long term, in the sense of like the Thunder's dynasty and their run of years and years, it is San Antonio who has the best chance to kind of throw a snag in this, because I do think that with De'Aaron Fox, you have a great player who is both capable of helping you win this year, but also is an asset at the trade deadline if you do want to move on from him. Let's say that this season is good, but San Antonio doesn't take quite the leap that you'd expect them to. Then you trade De'Aaron Fox for one more half a season of not being very good, but you get assets back for him. Like, De'Aaron Fox is either going to boom or bust for them, in the sense of boom and elevate them into like this top 6 seed in the West, and they're ahead of schedule and they get very valuable playoff run, or they're just kind of hanging around that 6 seed to 10 seed range, and you trade them and you get something back in the future that helps you the next season. But just looking at their young core, Victor Wembanyama is an incredible player and needs no introduction. Dylan Harper, like if Cooper Flagg did not reclassify into this draft, Dylan Harper would have been the number 1 pick in the draft. Stephen Castle just won Rookie of the Year and is a great player. Carter Bryant is winning player personified. Like, he does everything on the intangibles to help you win games. And that's just 4 of your young core, not to mention NBA quality, like stars in their role, not stars, but the role that they play it to a star level in Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson. Harrison Barnes is a veteran to kind of bridge that gap. Plus, they also sit on a lot of draft picks moving forward. So as long as San Antonio has nailed this coaching hire after Pop, they're going to be a team long-term that is a threat to OKC. Short-term, I think it's just Denver and Houston that are threats to OKC, because Houston, they could see it all go right for them. They could be this team that was only missing a bucket getter, and now you mix in Kevin Durant at the end, and he can help you win playoff games. But I wonder how much they sacrifice defensively with this move of Kevin Durant. Now, you make this move 10 times out of 10, because all you gave up was Jalen Green, who you wanted to lose anyway, and you wanted to get his money off your books anyway. But in terms of actually winning this season, when you have to play your best players in the playoffs, and you have to have Kevin Durant and Şengün share the floor, that defense that allowed you to stay in that Warriors series and almost win it, and allowed you to the 2nd seed last year in the West, is going to suffer because of this move. So how much does it suffer is the question for them. Whereas Denver is just a seamless fit. Every move that they made fits like a glove. The only move that has a question mark around it is Jonas Valanciunas, who the Thunder played off the floor in that Pelicans series a year ago. And he's not a good playoff player. And he knows that. Everyone knows that. But he just has to be better than DeAndre Jordan. You're going to play Jokic 45 minutes a night in the playoffs anyway. So what Valanciunas does is lets them be able to be the 2 seed or 3 seed in the Western Conference in the regular season. And how big of a deal is that? It's the difference in Denver not running into OKC in round 2. And if Denver didn't run into OKC in round 2, they likely make the West Finals. And if they make the West Finals, you have a longer series where you have the more days in between the start of that series and in between those games. And perhaps you stay healthier, perhaps you win the series against OKC. But avoiding OKC until the West Finals would be a big deal for them. And I just think that every move that they made, I think that Cam Johnson's is a huge upgrade to Michael Porter Jr. And they had the talent to win it last year, even with you could not have dreamed up a worse scenario for Denver last year. Like, Jamal Murray ended the series with the flu. Michael Porter Jr. couldn't raise his shoulder, couldn't raise his arm at all. Aaron Gordon gets hurt, and Jokic is just out there fighting for his life against an incredible Thunder defense. Whereas now, as long as they're healthy, they're going to be able to win that series. Now, the Thunder also got better from that series. They just got better from having to go through that. And the Thunder dealt with, as we know now, the J-Dub torn ligament in his wrist, which was bothering him throughout that series. He had to change his whole jump shot right before the playoffs. I think the Thunder are still the favorites in the West, but it is a clear cut OKC, Houston, Denver. And I do think that whoever survives the West will win the finals again. Because in the East, it could look like Indiana, where it's like Indiana did kind of get the benefit of the Thunder having to going through that 7-game series in Denver, having to face some tougher competition in the West, where they dropped game one and now they're kind of reeling a little bit after that loss. But they never really felt like they were going to win that series except for the fourth quarter of game 4. After the fourth quarter of game 4 and after the Thunder won game 5, it felt like it was the Thunder's finals to lose, and they end up winning it. So I think the East, it is 4 teams that can really do it. Orlando could make a run. Atlanta could make a run. But it's either crap or get off the pot time for Cleveland and New York. Like, if not now for Cleveland and New York, then when? Then when are they ever going to do it? And New York has a new coach, and Cleveland still has some playoff flaws about their roster. So I just think that there's too many question marks out east to consider any of those teams a true finals team and a true champion team. But in the West, it is a top 3, and that there's other teams on the margins who, if you just write a storybook fan fiction today, you could theoretically dream of them being champions. But for the Thunder and Houston and Denver, they don't need a fairy tale. They just need reality to play out for them to be able to win it.
Rylan, I can't tell you how big of a treat this was for me. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate your time. Sorry for the delay with Rizzo and his craziness, but appreciate you being with me. Thanks so much.
I appreciate coming on here, and shout out to Rizzo for really saving your bacon there with moving your truck.
He did his job. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
That was Rylan Stiles earlier today. Thanks for his time here on MPW Digital on BlueSky Live, a show that's brought to you each and every day by Lapel's Dry Cleaning, Oxford Locals, Ole Miss families. If you need dry cleaning or laundry done right, Lapel's Dry Cleaning has you covered. It's 3010 Old Taylor Road, right across from the Mark Condominiums. You can also give them a call, 662-638-3149. Mention MPW Digital. You get 50% off your first order. Are you retiring soon? How long should you wait to take Social Security? What accounts should you pull from first? Are you already retired? Should you consider Roth conversions? These are just some of the questions that can only be answered with the personalized retirement income plan. Get in touch with my friend Andrew Seago, Seago Wealth Management. He specializes in helping folks just like you come up with their retirement game plan. Get in touch with him at rebelsretire.com. If you're shopping for jewelry, you got jewelry needs, highly recommend Arnett's Fine Jewelry. It's a 4th-generation jeweler located on North Lamar Avenue right here in Oxford. They offer expert jewelry repair, and then they can fulfill all of your jewelry needs, whatever they may be. It's also great for gifts, birthdays, graduations, anniversary presents, push presents if your wife's expecting. So all that's there. It's not too early to be thinking about Christmas. Get an awesome gift for Christmas at Arnett's, where they want to be your jeweler. While you're in Oxford, stop by the College Corner just off Sisk Avenue right there in the Oxford Commons. They've got autographed footballs and helmets, all the gear that you want and need, all the best brands as you get ready for the football season ahead. Also 2 locations in Jackson and collegecornerstore.com. When you work with Argent Wealth 401k advisory services, you gain a valuable advisory team and time-saving resource that will help you develop and maintain a solid strategy for your retirement plan. They're committed to providing you with the personalized attention and involvement that you want and need. Get in touch with them at myargentwealth.com. And we're brought to you by John Edwards, Regency Travel Incorporated in Memphis. Get in touch with John if you're trying to create a special trip that makes a lifetime of unique memories. Just give him a budget, give him some parameters. He'll give you options you won't find on your own, I should say. And no, you don't have to live in or near Memphis to take advantage of his services. 901-494-3387 or send him an email, jedwards@regencytravel.net. Get the beautiful, healthy smile you deserve at Corinth Dental. Dr. Bubba McQueen, Dr. Jenny Beth Hendrick are devoted to restoring and enhancing the natural beauty of your smile. using conservative, state-of-the-art procedures that will result in a beautiful, long-lasting smile. From routine checkups to advanced treatment, including implants and Invisalign, Corinth Dental's here to help you achieve your smile goals. Schedule your appointment today. Take the first step toward a better version of yourself at corinthdental.com. Also brought to you by Parish Brewing Company. Wherever you're looking for beer, at your favorite bar, your favorite restaurant, your grocery store, look for Parish Brewing Company. Dr. Juice, Ghost in the Machine, Envy, Pescador, Canebrake, so much more. If it says Parish on the label, it's worth trying. You'll absolutely love it. Again, Parish Brewing Company. And we're brought to you by Art Hayes, Sotheby's International Realty. If you're thinking of making a move, put the power of Sotheby's to work for you. As a licensed agent with Sotheby's International Realty, a supporter of all things Ole Miss, Art can help you buy or sell in your hometown or anywhere in the world at no charge to you. Seriously. So call and ask Art how, 612-805-5929, or email Art at arthur.hayes@lakesmn.com. Some news breaking today. Ozzy Osbourne, dead at the age of 76. Just had his final performance days ago. Very much trending on social media now. Ozzy Osbourne, gone at the age of 76. Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, announced his retirement from football earlier today. Had a storied career at LSU and in the NFL, including a tenure with the Saints, Arizona Cardinals, and more. Phenomenal career. The Honey Badger announces his retirement, walking away from football. Some Ole Miss news today. Luke Haas, the tight end transfer from Arkansas, had a very strong spring, was expected to play a big role on Ole Miss's team this fall. According to multiple reports, he has suffered a fractured ankle, will miss a couple of months, including the likely first month plus of the Ole Miss season. So a big blow to the Ole Miss offense, losing Luke Haas to injury. I'm sure we'll have more on that at MPW Digital. I'm sure that all the guys covering the Rebels for the different media outlets will have things on that as well. For now, though, we go back to the Campbell Clinic hotline. Ti Windisch covers the Milwaukee Bucks. He also covers the Brewers a good bit. He's part of BlueWire Pods, part of the Gyro Step Podcast. I'm one of the podcasts that I listen to when I'm consuming NBA content. So we talked some Major League Baseball, some NBA, and a little bit of Wisconsin football with Ti Windisch, Milwaukee-based podcaster. Here's Ti. Ti Windisch joins here on BlueSky Live, part of MPW Digital. Ti knows all about MPW Digital. He's one of the people that helped get us over to BlueWire Podcast. He's the director of network growth at BlueWire. He's also, what we're going to talk about today, we might talk about BlueWire and podcasting and stuff, but mostly we're going to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks, the Milwaukee Brewers, some NBA, some Major League Baseball here on a July as we wait for football season to get rolling. Ti, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. I never thought I would qualify as a guest on the esteemed MPW Digital program, and I had to slow you down a little. You're like, "Oh, do you want to do some Big Ten?" I'm like, "I can't do Big Ten, but I'm excited to do the pro side of things." I'm getting more into college sports, but just not fully there, and so into the basketball side that it's just really hard to follow other stuff, at least to the degree of like being able to speak on it more than just like I'll flip on a game and cheer when the Badgers score a touchdown.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I was in Milwaukee for almost a week in March when Ole Miss was there for the NCAA tournament, and that is a cool town. That was the most I'd been there before. When I was in Mobile, I stopped in Milwaukee on my way to do a big Brett Favre story in Green Bay, and I guess I didn't stay in the right part of Milwaukee. I don't remember exactly. I was only there for I guess I was there for 2 nights, and I went to a couple of Cubs Brewers games. This was 2004. That's how long ago it was. It was Miller Park.
Yeah.
But this was the first time I got extended time in Milwaukee. That's a cool town. There's a lot of fun places in the area around the Pfizer Forum.
Yes.
Is fantastic. It's fantastic arena. The area is great. I loved it. I remember being like I was like happy Ole Miss won on Friday because I got to stay a couple more days there because I was like, there's some places I want to check out. And it was fantastic. I loved that place.
It's leveled up a lot since the last time. I mean, that's about 20 years. And, the old BMO Harris Bradley Center, the precursor to Fiserv Forum, was not a nice building. I mean, it was a hockey arena they built, and then they just put basketball in it. They obviously never got the NHL team they wanted. And Miller, now AmFam, we still call it Miller all the time, frankly. Just it's the parking lot thing. It's the tailgate piece is like the centerpiece of it. And there's a bunch of bars that are a little farther away that do shuttles to it, but it doesn't have that district that's now, I think, been kind of like the norm, and that they did a really good job of with Fiserv. They call it the Deer District down there. And it's hard to beat. Like, if you can just get yourself down there before the game, there's so many food spots, there's so many bars, of course, it being Wisconsin, and then same for after the game as well, right there in very short walking distance. So I don't know if you missed anything in 04 necessarily. I think a Bucks or anything in Fiserv trip is going to be better for seeing Milwaukee. But even outside of just the Deer District, like, I think a lot of the breweries have kind of leveled up their outdoor stuff. Like, I think the city has taken some broad steps forward in those couple of decades. And I always say, visit it when it's nice out. Don't come in January. Don't come in December. It does get really cold, but March is where it starts, and it's a little scattershot, of course. But in true summer, it's great. There's not many better places to be, I think, in the country.
Yeah, I remember being in Green Bay in August. And I was living in Mobile, Alabama at the time, where it's hotter than the surface of the sun in August. And,
Yeah.
yeah, I was in Green Bay, and there was a breeze, and it was like 71 degrees, and I was like, "This is amazing. I don't want to go
It's
home."
perfect.
Yeah, it was cold in March, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was doable. I mean, I walked everywhere. It wasn't bad. It was that when the wind kicked up, it got pretty cold, but it was great. It was a fun week. All right, before we get into that, I am curious about podcasts. You obviously podcast for a living. You're around podcasts for a living. We've been doing this podcast for 12 years, 13 years. I don't know. I lose track. Chase can tell me precisely, but I forget. Where's now that everyone in the world basically has a podcast, what's the difference? And you have to decide what's a good one, what's a sellable one, what's a marketable one, what's not. What's the difference between a good podcast and just a random podcast these days?
That's a great question. I think that the number one thing is pretty much, like, how engaged is the audience? How loyal is the audience? Is it more of like a community of the same people who are coming back episode after episode, year after year, and like picking up on the recurring jokes? And, if they see you out or they see you somewhere else, they'll mention it. They're really supporting. Like, if you talk about, you're rolling out, whether it's like merch or a sponsor, like, are they going and interacting with them? That is like kind of gold, I would say, in the podcast business. I think podcasting really engenders that as much as any other medium, and more than a lot of them, because folks feel like they're in the room here just listening into the conversation. And I think in a way that more so than most, certainly more than like a studio program, right? Where, you're tuning in, you're not sitting in on College Game Day or whatever it is. Not denigrating that, obviously. It's a great and successful show, but it's just different. And I think it's like, what is how in tune is your audience? How in tune are you with them? And of course, like, audience size matters too. But, there's been shows that we run into where maybe the reviews on Apple or whatever are really big, or the YouTube numbers, but, maybe they're not commenting, or they tune in because maybe it's something like controversial, or, a crazy opinion or something like that, or one big guest, but maybe they're not actually fans of the show, if that makes sense. And I think that's the number one thing that we've run into is, like, do you have an audience that really likes what you're doing and identifies with you and the host? Or is it just kind of like, we're putting out the flashiest, the best graphics, but people kind of just tune in for one little piece and then leave and don't come back?
Yeah, it's the community part is the most difficult part to build, and once you build it, it's gold. It's the one thing
Yeah.
you have to cling to and try to foster. And yeah, it's those consistent people in the streams that keep the
Yep.
stream going, so that when people come to the podcast, they're actually not they're coming for your content, obviously, but I think sometimes they're coming for I'll give you an example in a second. they're coming to be part of that community,
Yeah.
to interact with the other people in the stream. We did a show last year in football season. It was just really creative name. Get ready for it. MPW Digital Extra. As I know, it's so creative, but it was. I know. Take a minute to. I know.
Yeah, I'm gonna send that to some other shows around the network too. It's like take some inspiration.
Here's the thought. Anyway, from a content standpoint, and I'm biased, often during that week, I thought it was our most informative show. Like we would have, let's say Ole Miss was playing LSU. I had an LSU guy on. I'd have an SEC guy on. I'd bring in a national guest. Ben Mintz with Barstool would come on. We'd pick games, etc. I always thought it was a really good show, but everything was pre-recorded. And so a lot of times the stream wouldn't be active. And then people would come and you could sit and just watch the numbers. And you're like, son of a bitch. This is why the whole thing was pre-recorded. There was no live part. A year earlier, I'd done the show with a lot of pre-recorded interviews, but interspersed, I'd come back in and they would stay for that. Not for me, but there was a live element to it. And you know, everything wasn't recorded. And anyway, like this year kind of killed that show. I mean, because I don't think the bang was worth the buck, if you will. You know, we're better off doing another McCready and Siskey where it's live and people, even if it's a little repetitive, people are there for the community part. So I think you're spot on. Obviously, it makes sense since you do that for a living. All right.
Well, yeah, and it's like sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just the guest thing is funny because I think, if we had Giannis on our Bucks podcast, I'm sure it would do great. But some of the episodes where we've had like other Bucks players or, big time media, and it'll do okay. Then I'll go back and look at and I don't base everything on the numbers, but it's the only real point of outside of just hearing what people say. And it's like, oh, it did 200 less than my co-host Rohan Kadi and myself, like going through like the whole summer league roster and breaking down what we think of these guys who half of them will never play in the NBA. But it's like, oh, we have more banter, and it's just like that's what they come for. It's what the listeners are here for, and the viewers and everything. And it's always funny because I think as a creator, like I got to get the huge guests, I got to do this and that, I got to go viral, and I think being authentic and that sort of thing is so it's like the most important thing.
I learned that in my radio days. When I started in radio in Mobile, I was with Taylor Zarzer, who's now the radio voice of the Tennessee Titans, the voice of basically the PGA Tour on XM Radio. And so Taylor was great at radio. It was the beginning of his career, but you could tell he was going to be a star. And we were guest obsessed. We were just, hey, let's line up guests. Let's at the end of the show, let's be able to go, hey, we would just randomly call people. Like, I don't know if you remember this. I think his name was Neil Huntington. He was the general manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Okay.
And on a flyer one day, I called the Pirates and asked if he'd come on, and he did. And then he said he liked the show. And so we'd get him on like once every 2 or 3 weeks. It was awesome for us, but like nobody really cared in Mobile about the Pirates. And so it didn't ever really take off. And we finally learned, no, you know what people want? They want us to talk about what we did over the weekend. We went, hey, I went to a movie. What'd you think of the movie? It was it was 2003. It was the year that, and Taylor's a big Red Sox fan. It was the year that the Red Sox, the Aaron Effin Boone game, it was the year of the Steve Bartman game, and people loved listening to us talk about the agony of like those games. And like the day of Game 7, I spent the whole show going, I'm not watching this tonight. I'm going to go see a movie. What movie should I see? We opened it up for calls. People are calling in going, dude, you have to watch the game. You have to do it. No, you should go to the movie. Here's the movie you should go see. And it's like, if I go to the movie, how do I focus on the movie and not think about, okay, what inning are they in? What's going on? And, and then people are like, oh, you just got to get away from your house. You got to go someplace where you can be alone, like, pre-tip the bartender, like, here, just keep the beer coming, leave me alone, I'm going to suffer in agony, which is ultimately what I did. And anyway, but that's the stuff that built community on that show, because people would see you out and be like, hey man, I'm really sorry about the Cubs, or like with Taylor, I'm sorry about the Red Sox. Yeah, they're going to get it, and that next
Mhm.
year, sure enough, the Red Sox win the title, and it's just the whole place is euphoric because they're happy for him. They weren't Red Sox fans,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So that's
Right.
the stuff that you can only build organically, and it takes time and it's hard.
Yeah. We'll do these stupid segments of like trivia or like talking about food or things like that. And every time, like right after we wrap up in my head, I'm like, oh man, like what are we? This is a Bucks podcast. People are gonna be like, come on, talk about the game, whatever. And then I look at the comments and it's all like, oh my God, the section about which kind of lettuce is the best was like my favorite. And I'm just like, people are kind of insane, but I appreciate it.
Well, you know what? It's the funny part about this. I promise people that are listening, we'll get to stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But the funny part about that is, like, I always viewed it like, okay, if a group of us got together, let's say 5 or 6
Mhm.
of us got together, we're all Bucks fans, right? And we go to a sports bar. The Bucks are playing in Charlotte. I mean, there's a chance that it ends up being an awesome game, that we're at the end of it, we're locked into it, and we're talking about, all right, they're going to try to take away Giannis here. Where's the ball going? But there's also a
Yeah.
real chance that it's just a 17-point win, or it's a
Mhm.
13-point loss. It's a schedule loss. It's some cat for the Hornets goes off, goes for 37.
Yep.
Just one of those nights. If you watch the NBA, you know that your team's going to have those nights where they win. They're going to have some of those nights when they lose. It's just a game. And in those,
Yeah.
yeah, we're sitting there and the game's on, but we're not really talking about the game, right? We're talking about lettuce or something. I mean, we get
Yeah.
silly, we start talking about something else. And if you can find a way to take that into a podcast, you win.
100%.
And that's just, and that's for a lot of people, that's hard to do because they get locked into that. Nope, I got to talk about the Bucks or the Mariners or Ole Miss or LSU or whatever, and it has to stay on topic at all times. And I'm like, I don't know that you ever meet people like that really at the sports bar, and that's what you're sort of trying
Yeah.
to recreate. All right, you do the Gyro Step podcast. It's about the Milwaukee Bucks. I know you know this, but for our listeners, 4 years ago the Bucks won the title. They haven't been able to get back to it again. What is, even though they have, I think, one of the 2 or 3 best players in the world still on their team in Giannis Antetokounmpo, why has it been so hard to repeat, not just repeat, but to get back and put themselves in a position to win again?
Yeah, I think, not to sound like the homer excuses guy, I think injuries is what I would say first. I mean, the year they lost right after in 22, I really think they had a great chance to go back to back, and Middleton slips and tears something. I think it wasn't the hamstring. That was earlier in his career. I think it was a knee, but slips and is out for the rest of the playoffs against the Bulls in the first round. And they take Boston to game 7 without him playing at all. And he was like the Celtics killer. I mean, even when they used to always lose to Boston, but he was the guy who would go off against Boston. They were so close, and they had a lead at home in game 6 to close it. And Tatum makes an incredible series of plays in that fourth quarter, and Boston holds on. And then the Bucks are out of gas in game 7. But that's the one you look back and for sure, I think as a Bucks fan, go, that was a great opportunity because the whole core was still good, and some of the age-related stuff hadn't caught up with some of the guys yet. And then that started to roll in after. But Giannis misses time in the year the Heat upset them, and then in the Dame Giannis era, those guys play, I think it's like 60-ish minutes together. And frankly, for all of them, Dame is a hobbled form of Dame. He fights to get back from the blood clots, but is not effective at all. And then, of course, tears his Achilles. But I'll say the other piece I think is they weren't proactive enough in building a more modern team. And I think they rode the old core a little too long, and injuries kept cropping up. But also, I don't think they had enough two-way players. And then for the most of probably the whole Damian Lillard era, and you can kind of forgive it the first year because they add him right before camp, and it's like you don't want to turn down adding a player like that. But they had built a roster that made a lot of sense with Drew Holiday as their point guard, and then basically turned him into the opposite kind of player. And they had too many shooters and not enough two-way, especially defensive players between him and Giannis. And I think ultimately that was their biggest sin of the Dame era, and maybe it wouldn't have mattered anyway. I think if those two guys don't play together, they don't win much substantial, but I don't think they ever had a very logical roster around Dame and Giannis, and that really held back what they could do, at least in the regular season.
You and I talked about this a little bit before we hit the record button. I think it's so tempting for small market teams that have a star to go, okay, we got to go all in right now. Put all the chips in the on the table. Let's try to do it right now because we're worried that this star is going to want out. He's going to do a Kevin Durant. He's going to do, LeBron.
Anthony Davis.
LeBron,
Yeah.
multiple times. I mean, there's reasons to have that fear. It's a legitimate fear.
Yeah.
It's not the boogeyman. It's a real monster that lingers out there. But I think it's been proven that the most prudent thing to do, though, the thing that gives you the most consistent opportunity to be a perennial contender, and eventually maybe you break through, maybe you get lucky and win one, is to stay the course. And that's hard to do. It's sort of it's doing a diet the right way, as opposed to like, okay, well, I'm going to crash for 3 weeks. I'm not going to eat anything for 3 weeks, and I'm going to do this sauna thing where I lose a bunch of weight. But the moment that I go back to normal, the weight's coming back. It's kind of like that. I think when I saw Milwaukee do the Lillard trade, I remember just kind of thinking to myself, that feels like panic. That feels like they're scared about what might be around the corner with Giannis.
I honestly think it's both that, and this has just been their MO of the opposite of the patient mindset. Like and John Horst, their general manager, said this in Vegas at the Miles Turner press conference, of just like, we think we have the best player in the world, because he was asked, oh, the East is weaker, so is that why you kind of wanted to go in this year? And he said, like, you'd never confuse us for a team that wasn't aggressive. I mean, we want to go in every year. We think Giannis is the best, and we think we want to win with him. And I think that really is how they feel. I think if they ultimately didn't believe a little bit that they at least have a puncher's chance if they go in, they wouldn't do all of this. I think they'd play it a little more fast and loose with losing Giannis. But I just think they continue to go in, and the latest version isn't picks in a trade, but it's, of course, the Dame wave and stretch to open up space to add Miles Turner, who I think is a really nice compliment to Giannis in their front court. But I think it's got to be kind of a mix. I don't think they've done a good enough job of developing. They kind of kept a veteran core, but they have not been able to draft and develop young players and keep them around. I do think that has cost them significantly during this run and left them without some depth at times that they really needed. But also, I think if they had stayed the core with their first great team, which they won 60 games in Mike Budenholzer's first year with Eric Bledsoe at point, I don't think they ever get the title if they have Bledsoe and not Drew Holiday. And that was also a go-in trade where they sent a lot of firsts and swaps. So I think there's room for it, but I think it's got to be more sustainable in that if you're going to give up all that stuff, it's got to be a player who you think is going to be valuable not in the longer term, and who you believe you can keep as well. And they could have still had Drew this whole time. He wasn't angling to get out. He wanted to be a Buck for life, and they felt like they needed to raise the ceiling of the half-court offense, which, again, at the time, I liked the trade, even though it was clearly aggressive. Obviously, it played out about as poorly as possible. But I think going forward, I think right now there's players in the league like DeMar DeRozan or Zach LaVine who are probably very available, but older players, injury-concerned players, which has bit the Bucks, really expensive salary-wise. And it does feel like at the moment they are more interested in, I think everyone on the team except like Gary Harris and maybe Bobby Portis is younger than Giannis. He's kind of the oldest player, at least in the real rotation he is. So it feels like they're leaning more into, let's retain a bunch of these young players with upside and try to keep these guys around, instead of, all right, let's get 3 more old guys and see how that goes for us again. And hopefully they can stay healthy and not regress, which I think they kept running into with the players they were investing in.
Yeah, it's a grueling schedule. I mean, 82 games,
yeah,
travel, and I mean, if you're too old and not deep enough, that can catch you. Has there ever been any sign? Oh, you're there. From the outside, I haven't really seen it. Just national media people doing the Stephen A. Smith, create a scandal Wednesday. Has there ever been any sign inside Milwaukee or close to the Bucks that at any point Giannis has been unhappy and has hinted at wanting to leave? Because it sort of seems like he seems awfully happy there, that he wants that to be his franchise.
Mostly, yes. He will reaffirm that he wants the team to continue pushing. And whether that means like spending, being aggressive, just the talent level on the roster, I think that's his kind of go-to move and saying like, I want to see it. I want to win a championship. And he has in the past said like, I want it to be in Milwaukee, but I really want to win. That's the goal. But also, I think part of me looks at it, and I think Giannis is almost a romantic in how he sees the game. And like, I think every time they fire a coach, even if it's a coach who did terrible, Giannis is really upset about it. Like, he wanted to keep the coach. He loved the coach. He thought it was a great coach. Same with the teammates. Like, they traded Michael Carter Williams. He's like, man, I loved Michael Carter Williams. Michael Carter Williams was not a good Buck, right? But I think Giannis gets bought in. So I wouldn't be surprised if Giannis looked at this roster where some people out there will say it's terrible and it's not even going to make the play-in or whatever. Giannis is probably looking at this thinking, I think Gary Trent Jr. and Kevin Porter Jr. are phenomenal because I remember playing with them and I loved it. Taurean Prince is an amazing shooter. So I do think he wants them to not be complacent. And I think part of that may be him looking at like the Sixers took the gap year with Joel Embiid. And Joel Embiid might not ever have another great season again. And obviously Giannis hasn't had the same injuries, but they can come fast for any player out of nowhere. And I think Giannis maybe even looks over at Golden State. And you obviously can't knock the winning they've done. But since kind of the KD era, I know they went back and won in 22, they've not been very aggressive, I'd say, to add talent. They went and got Jimmy Butler this year, but they've kind of been more like, we're going to hold the young players. We're going to do the 2 timeline thing, right? Like we're going to, we want to be good when Steph is here, but we're not going to go all in. I don't think Giannis likes that. I don't think he wants to do that. I don't think he's interested in, I'll play out my career and you guys can build a second timeline for when I'm gone. Like I think he wants to be more competitive. And I think the Bucks have frankly been on board with that and saying like, yeah, I mean, we went 50 years without a title. We went 50 years without a player on this caliber. Like, we'll just go all in and, whether we have our picks or not, we're probably not going to be a competitive team at the highest level again once Giannis is gone anyway.
All right, so I was talking to Rylan Stiles earlier today. He covers the Thunder, and we were talking about the East briefly. I mean, Indiana won the East this last season. Tyrese Halliburton, unfortunately, tears his Achilles in Game 7. He's going to miss the season. Miles Turner leaves to go to Milwaukee. You got to I know TJ McConnell wrote in Players Tribune that, hey, we're going to be back, but I mean, it's kind of hard to see that right now with their team.
Yeah.
When Jason Tatum's going to miss a season in all likelihood for Boston. When you look at the East right now, it does feel kind of wide open a little bit. I mean, the Knicks, the Cavs, maybe the Magic, Hawks, the Bucks. I mean, when you look at the East a few months ahead of time, how do you sort of handicap it?
Yeah, I think I would be really surprised if one of Cleveland or New York, if those weren't the top 2, I just feel like their depth and their top end talent, I think those teams should rack up wins just because I think they're so far ahead of most of the teams in the conference that they're just going to stack wins. I think Orlando is going to be quite good. I still have some questions, frankly. Like I'm not penning them into top 4 even, and I think a lot of people are, and I understand it, and I think some of their talent is great. I'm really interested to see like how well does Bane shoot it when he's the one shooter. Because I think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has been a really good shooter. And then you go there to Orlando and they kind of just throw you out there and they're like, yeah, no one else can shoot. It's kind of just you. I think that's hard. I think that's harder to do than people realize. And they've not had, I think, a top half offense in like 20 years. It's something ridiculous. So I think they'll be quite good. And I think, Paolo and Franz get a little better and maybe that just makes up for it. But I have some questions about them. I like what Atlanta did. I think they're certainly much better. And that Trae Young
draft night, man. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
that is, yeah.
They might have traded for the top pick in the draft.
I mean, listen, I think Milwaukee's going to do well, but if Giannis leaves or gets hurt, and New Orleans, the best case for New Orleans, they might still be a lottery team, right? Like in the other conference, which is insane. So, yeah, I think that asset, that's got to be the number 1 draft asset in the league. I mean, the best of, if anyone doesn't know, that to trade down 10 spots, the Hawks did, got a player who I think they would have considered it their original pick. They get the best of New Orleans and Milwaukee's 2026 first. No protection, nothing. And it's not a swap. They just get that pick. That was from the Drew Holiday trade. New Orleans doesn't look great. Milwaukee, again, is kind of tenuous. I think they'll be fine. But if something goes wrong, they could have an amazing pick this draft. So I think Atlanta is really well set up for the future. I do think they'll be good now. I don't know if they'll be championship contender good, but we'll see. And then that's about where I slot in Milwaukee. I kind of put them around those two teams. I think a lot of people are kind of underrating some of the young players on the roster who really took significant steps forward. And if you look at some of the lineups when they did go smaller, they took Brook Lopez off, they took Dame off and played these younger guards who can really defend and shoot it. Milwaukee played really well as a team. And like they played better with just Giannis on than with Giannis and Dame on the court together. I just think they have a higher defensive floor, and Giannis is sort of this quasi point forward with limited scoring guards around him, I think is a really good recipe to work. And the funny thing about the Bucks is people talk about them like they've kind of been a disaster. They're second in wins of all teams in the 2020s thus far. They won 48 games last year. I mean, it wasn't like they, barely hobbled into the play-in. They held on to above play-in seeding, even with injuries and other things going on with them. So I think they're set up to do well. But yeah, the East certainly is from a playoff perspective. I don't think anyone trusts the Cavs just because it seems like they always go out when they shouldn't. And the Knicks, I mean, they might end up being the popular pick to win the conference, but they had some questions in just like how they finish a series against Atlanta. Certainly a new coach coming in. We'll see how Mike Brown does and how different they look this year.
Yeah, I agree with all that completely. The East is interesting, and then whoever wins it gets into a 7-game series, and as the Pacers showed, I mean, you steal a game quickly, and all of a sudden it's a long series, and you've got a shot. You're an NBA guy. When you look out west, curious if your opinion matches Rylan's, is there a team out west that you see as the best chance to prevent the Thunder from going on some dynastic run?
I think it's Denver. I like what Houston has done. I still have some questions. I mean, one, like getting Kevin Durant is awesome. I think the price they paid is totally reasonable to do so.
Yep.
You do have to be in the back of your head, though, like this guy's 37. Like it comes for all of us eventually. I know LeBron is still an all NBA player at 40, and Kevin Durant's teams haven't necessarily been great lately, even when he's available. Now, the Rockets were great, so I'm not saying they're going to be bad, but I still like, do they have enough ball movement? Like, I like their team. I think they're really deep. I think they'll defend very well. But I think Denver pushed Oklahoma City as hard as Indiana or anyone did. And I think they've added some really nice depth. And I think if he's available for them in the playoffs, which is a big question, Cameron Johnson should help more than Michael Porter Jr., who was also hurt but played through it. But I think it gives you just a little more different things offensively than just like the big guy who shoots the rock, so to speak. So I think Denver, just because Jokic, like the way the Thunder play defense is so hard on small players, but I think Jokic breaks it a little bit, and that they don't have no one has anyone who's just going to stop him. And then it gets harder to deal with all the other guys flying around when he's such a problem in the middle of the floor. I actually think that's why Milwaukee was able to beat OKC. I know no one really cares about it, but the NBA Cup game, which I thought was a phenomenal basketball game, Giannis did the same, right? Like for all the great defenders they have, there's just no one who you can throw at a Giannis or a Jokic in the same way you can at a Halliburton or a Siakam or any other wing player. And I think that's the big difference. Like those heliocentric bigs there's just not as much you can do with them for any defense, even one as great as OKC. So I think Denver in the playoffs is the team I go. It's really hard to beat Joker, man. We've not seen many teams do it, and it looks really hard when they do. And then the rest of the conference, I don't know. I don't like many other teams' shots against OKC. I mean, they could not be more well-positioned to be in conference finals for like the next half decade.
Yeah, because they're just going to get better. I mean, you have to figure, the odds of Holmgren playing more than 32 games in the regular season are pretty high. Jalen Williams is going to get better. Played the playoffs with 31 shots in the wrist. That's incredible. I mean, the more you hear that, you're like, wow, that dude. And then you got Shea, and then you've got this roster full of sort of interchangeable defensive parts that aren't asked to do a lot offensively. Typically, it's just, one guy might have a night. And then I think the Thunder have a potential fourth star. I mean, they won't be able to keep him long term, but in the next couple of years they could. I think Cason Wallace could end up being better.
Cason, yeah.
Yeah. He's so elite defensively because of his athleticism, and then he can get to the basket. He can shoot the three. Ironically, I don't know that he shoots it as well as Dort does today, but I think he probably will over time. So that I'm with you. I think it's Denver. I don't think it's Houston. And Rylan and you sort of had the same opinion. I just wonder with Houston. Yeah, the Durant deal's a no-brainer. You do it, but I do wonder defensively, especially when he has to play at the same time as Şengün against in playoff minutes. Like, do you have enough defensively? Amen Thompson's an elite defender, but is that enough? You know, the Thunder won because they had multiple elite defenders. Indiana got where it got because they have multiple really strong defenders, and I don't know that Houston can match that. Denver might not be able to either, but I don't think Houston can. And like you said, Denver's got Jokic, and he's such a complete game changer trying to defend him in much the same way Giannis is.
Yeah, and I think Denver too, just with like some more reliable players. I think they had to over rely on their young guys a bit much with kind of like, I mean, frankly, their head coach and GM just didn't get along, and that's why the org cleared them both out right before the playoffs. And now maybe a little more stability, a little deeper roster. And people forget, I think, too, not to obviously, guys get hurt in every series every year. We just talked about Jalen Williams, but like Aaron Gordon's injury, I think really took the wind out of the sails of Denver. And maybe that goes. I mean, it was such a close series as is. Maybe it goes differently. The other Jalen Williams, I thought like keeping him when I thought he was going to be a player that maybe they cut bait with to open the roster spot for Sorber, who they drafted, who they really like, I think, out of Georgetown. And they get a new deal with him. They keep everyone. They trade I forget now the name, but one of their Usman Jang, I think they moved on, like some of the guys who haven't been playing as well.
They moved Dylan Jones, but
Dylan Jones, that's what it was.
That's the interesting thing about Jang. They still have him. Obviously, he's not part of their plans anymore, but he's a really tradable asset because he defends at an NBA level now. He's got an expiring deal. They're going to be able to have some flexibility at the deadline if they decide they need to add just some bench piece or if they just want to create some more draft capital or whatever. I mean, they're going to be able to do that. Let's switch to baseball. It's July the 22nd as we tape this, and as of this moment, the Milwaukee Brewers are the best team record-wise in Major League Baseball. They have a one-game lead over the Cubs in the National League Central. I think the Tigers are right there with these two teams. The Blue Jays. There's some really good teams in Major League Baseball, but the Brewers right now have the best record. I'm going to guess that if I had told you before the season 100 games in, the Brewers have the best record, you probably wouldn't have quite believed me.
No, would not have. You got coming into the year, it was like got some exciting young guys, like some of their talent. The big story, Jackson Chourio last season, and if you showed me his year-over-year OPS and also said that, I really wouldn't have believed you because he's not had the greatest season thus far. But the big offseason thing was like, oh, another guy walks, Willy Adames to the Giants, and how are they going to fill that spot in the lineup? Already a team that you wouldn't look at and go like, oh, they're a great offensive team, right? They've had the staff, but they've not had enough offense. So I would not have believed you. I actually started my morning, Neal, by looking back every year because Baseball Reference lets you go in. Every year on July 21st, so that's after the games that day, so the morning of July 22nd, this is the first time ever the Milwaukee Brewers have led the Major League in wins at this point in the season. So uncharted territory to an extent. I think the 82 team may have done it at like a different point a little later, like a different day. They were very close on this day, but not something we're used to seeing in Milwaukee, even though they have had a lot of good seasons and gone to the playoffs a lot of times. So no, I would not have believed you at all.
So the Brewers have won, 11 in a row? Something like that? I mean, they're just scorching hot. What has made them so hot? It's not a team full of offensive firepower. I mean, I watch them play, and the things that stick out is athleticism, speed. Yep. They're a really good defensive team. They've got some really good pitching, but it's not like Paul Skeens is leading the rotation here. And then offensively, I mean, they're a good team, but it's not a bunch of guys just knocking the ball out of the ballpark consistently. It's frankly, in the modern baseball era, this is not the type of team that typically wins 11 games in a row and goes on this run. What has led to it?
Yeah, they lead into the speed. And I think for what they don't have in, great hitters who are going to hit for a huge average or hit a bunch of dingers, which is kind of what, like my first good Brewers era I remember was 08 and 11. That's when they snapped a very long postseason drought, and it was like Prince Fielder and Ryan Braun, and they're socking homers left and right, and ironically didn't really have the pitching then. But they get on base when they can. They steal a ton of bases. I think they really enjoy having players who are really great defenders and who are fast on the base path. So they're not hitting, 280 or the OPS of 800 or whatever you want to look at. But when they do get on there, they're a weapon to maybe get in a position where only one more hit scores a run, and getting in a couple of runs, and they bunt a lot too with that speed. They'll bunt for hits. And they don't need a lot of runs because in this time, their starting pitchers are giving up, I think, like less than 2 runs per game over this win streak. And they maybe now they have the standout in Mizorowski, the controversial all-star who is like breaking their StatCast, and I think maybe already or is going to have more 100-mile-an-hour pitches than any Brewers pitcher since they've begun tracking that stat. But it's just really a bunch of solid. We have what they call their pitching lab, and guys just have better results. I mean, one of their best pitchers this year has been Quinn Priester, who they got from the Red Sox in a trade that I panned. I'm like, this guy, all his numbers are terrible. In minors, he wasn't even good. But what they do is they look at the tools, the stuff, so to speak, and they make some sort of judgment of like, we have this guy tweak this, or, William Contreras has been a great framer. I think that helps a little too, but like we have a great defense too. So I think sometimes guys who put the ball in play, but not give up homers, like they're okay taking the chance, but they just get the best out of him. Priester's been an amazing starter for them. And suddenly that trade looks incredible. Brandon Woodruff comes back from injury. Like they have volume of pitchers, if not the elite ones.
Yeah, one of their nerds in their inside their building saw something, and you know what? If you change a release thing here, maybe it'll work, maybe it doesn't. It's a flyer, and then suddenly it takes off. And I thought they really benefited from Woodruff coming back. Like,
oh yeah,
I thought it was huge. I think he made his debut for them this year in Miami, and they won a game. They had split the first 2 games of that series. The Cubs were beginning to pull away a little bit, and the Marlins are a kind of a mediocre team, but they've got some talent. And I was that if I recall correctly, he pitched on a Sunday, and I don't think he got the win, but I think the Brewers won the game. But I thought it was, you could sort of see something on that team, like, oh, okay, we've got this guy back, and and man, you add a guy like that to your rotation. First class guy, he's going to stand up and he's going to take the ball. He's going to be tough. He's probably not going to be elite anymore, but he's going to be really solid. And in baseball, I just think teams settle down and they get that guy on the mound and they go, okay, we're going to have a shot today. And I just thought it felt big for the Brewers that day, and they've kind of taken off around that time. And so the trade deadline's coming up 9 days from about right now, 9 days and a few hours. Do you anticipate the Brewers being super active? They've got a lot of young talent. They've got a good organization. Do they go for Eugenio Suarez to try to get a big bat in the middle? What do you anticipate?
I think more likely they go for like a Ryan McMahon, just a complimentary guy who can slot in and give them a little more pop from the corner infield. That's what I think everyone's talking about the most. But thing is, like another one of these, and rare, this is really rare. Usually they get hitters in their worse immediately. They get Andrew Vaughn for Savale, who was unhappy and wanted to go and get out because they have too many starters. I mean, Nestor Cortez is supposed to be back soon too, and they don't really have a starting spot for him, frankly, at the moment. And Vaughn has more RBIs than games played as a Brewer. He's been incredible. He's been a strong defender. He's been amazingly clutch with the bat. I don't anticipate him to continue having more RBIs than games played. Like there's going to be a slowdown there, but that seems like a nice kind of random jolt that's really helped literally in this particular streak. He's given them the lead in a lot of these games with timely hitting. So that's been great, but I think they probably need a little more there. Right now, they're like Joey Ortiz and Caleb Durbin. Durbin's hitting the ball well at third. Ortiz at short, not so much. And Pat Murphy, their manager, has called out kind of his plate approach. So a little more infield power, but both those guys are really good defenders. Especially Ortiz is a great defender. So I think it's tough for them because I don't think they want to play poor defenders. I don't think they're really interested in that. So I think it'll be more buy low on offense and then maybe a reliever or two. I think they really like the ending of their bullpen, but another leverage arm that they can rely on. Like they've got like Aaron Ashby, a former starter, where you look at the ERA and it's great, but he's been in some really big moments and it hasn't gone well for them. So maybe just someone who's more used to those like 8 innings in a crucial game where you really need to hold the 1-run lead. And maybe they even move a starter, because I think they have too many major league starters. I'm not sure anyone anticipated Mizorowski being, historically good to start, Woodruff getting healthy, and some of the other developments they've had with their starting. And Freddie Peralta, to his credit, had kind of been like a, quasi ace. Like they put him out there first, but you don't always totally believe. And I think he's really taken a step forward this year and been a lot more reliable and has taken that mantle on.
Yeah, he's terrific. As a Cubs fan, I hate when he pitches. I just hate it. It feels like the Brewers always win when he pitches.
Yeah.
Craig Counsell, former Brewers manager, now the manager of the Cubs. Twofold question: are the people in Milwaukee are they over the Counsell hate yet? And then secondly, when you look at the Cubs, just a game back, they're 59-41 after 100 games. They're playing awfully well. When you look at the Cubs, what do you see? What do you anticipate they try to do at the deadline?
I don't think they're ever going to be over Counsell. I don't think they're ever going to be. I don't think Brewers fans will ever have any love lost for that. For they don't have any. I don't think they'll ever find it again. I just think we were all ready for him to leave. And if he goes, even the Mets, which would have been a little annoying with the Stearns thing, it's like, okay, they're just poaching all of our guys. Like, it's annoying, but if I'm Craig Counsell and I get double the money or whatever, and I get to go actually manage a team that's going to spend money, can't totally blame them. But then Cubs didn't even have an opening and they make it happen. And no, I don't think, and some of the comments, not terrible, but they'll never be fully over it, which I think is like, as long as it doesn't get outrageously virile, like that's part of sports. I think it's a rivalry better. The deadline, I mean, I don't know. I think they clearly need pitching. And I think my concern would be not some big splashy move that could leave them vulnerable down the line, but more of like, can they work the margins and bring in like a couple of buy lows where it doesn't really kill their farm, but just gives them some more stability. But we're just looking at it generally right now. It feels like it's going to be a dogfight all the way down. I mean, how many of these have we had with Brewers Cubs where it's like, is the Central going to be decided? Is there going to be a game 162? Is there going to be a game 163? Like we've had that before.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, it feels like we're not used to it being leading the MLB as well. We're more used to like, figuring out who's going to be like the 3 seed or whatever it is in the NL. But that makes it even more fun to me. But just because of this current heater, by no means am I like, oh, the Brewers are going to cruise. I mean, I think I would anticipate it's a pretty hotly contested division down the line at this point.
Yeah, the interesting part, there's two things that are interesting. One, statistically, the Brewers' schedule is much more difficult than the Cubs down the last 2 months. The bigger thing to me is, and maybe there's some recency bias here, going into the season, everyone just goes, oh, it's the Dodgers. They're going to win. They're so much better than everybody else. And they're still awfully good. But they don't feel infallible right now. Their bullpen's not great. They've got some injuries offensively. Some guys are starting to look old, frankly, for the first time. When you wear the crown, it's heavy, and you can sort of see that a little bit with them. And then, the Mets aren't world beaters. They're good. The Phillies are good, but they're not just. You don't watch the Phillies, and you're not awed. The Braves are having an off season. You look at the rest of the Central, and I mean, Cincy's got a nice team, but there's not enough there, and the Cardinals are fading. It feels like you said, there's been years where the Cubs and Brewers were in like some division race, but you're like, neither one of these teams are winning in the postseason. And this time it does feel a little different. Like I watched the Brewers play, and you're like, that team could win in the postseason. Their bullpen's really strong, and they pitch really well. And the Cubs, when Boyd's pitching or when Imanaga's pitching, and the lineup's pretty healthy, you're like, yeah, they could maybe do it if if the stars lined up just right. So I'm interested to see like what the Cubs do at the deadline, because I told you going in, I'm not the passionate Cubs fan I used to be. I still follow them. If I'm the Cubs, I'm not unloading my farm system that they've rebuilt that's pretty good right now to make a 1-year run, and then Kyle Tucker leaves at the end of the season to go to the Yankees or wherever. And now I I took this one, to steal a phrase from you, I took this one big chomp at the apple, and next year I can't get my mouth anywhere close to the apple. There's no bite. And I would be a little concerned about that. You've got some good young players. You've got open books at the end of the 2026 season. You can build around Pete Crow Armstrong. You've got some young guys. Cade Horton looks like he's going to be a very proficient major league pitcher as he gets older. I would be careful at going all chips in this year unless I knew Kyle Tucker was going to resign.
Yeah, and then maybe you get someone who's not a true rental, right? Maybe you get him for another year or two to pair with that. Yeah, I think, that's I said before we recorded too, like I think I've kind of come around on how the Brewers approach this. I think part of it is just MLB has the most random play, maybe hockey. I'm not well versed in hockey, but the playoff is kind of random. Like the best team wins sometimes, but often it's like what team is like having this crazy run. It almost feels like devil magic of like, oh, that guy is just always going to get hot in September and it changes your season, or your pitcher who had the 1 ERA. Yeah.
Yeah.
And suddenly they give up 4 home. I mean, Devin Williams just melting down against the Mets. And it was like, oh, it's over. The Brewers are going on. This is going to be the year. And Pete Alonso, who's terrible all year, comes in and hits that homer and it ruins their season. And that just happens every year in baseball. And I do think for the Brewers, as much as you'd like to see them be more aggressive, it is kind of, there's a lot of value in just like, we're going to be a player who probably makes it in or is really close every year. And maybe this is our year. And this one more than most, it just feels like they have that kind of magic of just like a lot of guys are hitting it well. And even though they don't have like the MVP candidate, it's like there's all these players who can come through and deliver in a key moment or give you a great start when you need it. And it's like, oh, I don't want to mess with it too much either. Like they could use some more juice. They could use a reliever, but you don't want to tinker too much and then maybe lose what's working either. So that's the difficulty of the deadline for me is I don't think there's one spot I look at where I'm like, oh yeah, that's the guy who has to go and you have to bring this guy in. It would be hard for me to make a big substantial. I certainly wouldn't trade Peralta. I keep seeing that report. They have a team option that's very reasonable for next year. Maybe in the winter it's different, but this year you just can't do that.
No, you don't mess with chemistry, especially in baseball.
No.
Like the one sport that, like in basketball, usually the best teams win, right? They got the guys that can score. You got guys that are defenders, all that stuff. Basketball's more of a strategic game. Baseball, especially late in the year, and I don't know whether this is just me. Maybe I'm completely off. I never played in the majors. I have no idea. But it feels like teams just get this, like in the movie Major League chemistry kind of thing going. Like that.
Yeah.
Like a real thing. And, teams just feel like they aren't going to lose. The Mets kind of had some of that late last season where it was like they just, I don't know. They're going to find a way to win. Like I remember exactly where I was when Alonso hit that home run, and you could tell the entire stadium was just in shock. And I was sitting there going, I don't know, kind of saw this coming. The Mets just did that, and I don't think you can predict that. But Milwaukee's playing that way right now. Maybe they won't play that way for 2 more months, but you can't mess with it here at the deadline. And all of a sudden you mess up your chemistry and you lose your mojo, for lack of a better word, because it looks like Milwaukee's got mojo in spades right now.
I think they learned it from the Hader trade too, because I think it was a smart move and you look at the assets and everything and it worked out for them. But that year it sunk them and it had an impact on the clubhouse. And they haven't done something like that since, where it's like, we're going to move a guy who's really important for just kind of like parts. And maybe those parts end up being really helpful, but for that season, it kills you. I just don't think you can do that when you're leading to 100 games. Also, quick thought. I think that's why the Pacers run was so fun, because it was baseball-like, of just like, they're going to do it again. And they just kept figuring out a way. And like, you don't see that in the NBA usually.
Yep.
And I think it made for whatever people say about the small market finals or whatever, a really compelling playoff. Just like, are they going to do it every time they're in a close game? Even the ones they lost, I'm like, Neesmith hits 1-3 and I would sit up in my seat and go, oh, they might hit 4 more in a row now.
Yeah. I'll never forget my son in the middle of game 7 going, oh my God, TJ McConnell. Like, like this is not and I was like, I get it, man. I mean, I'm totally with you. I mean, I'm prepared to have my heart broken by Pascal Siakam, but TJ McConnell? No.
Yes.
Little 6'1" white guy that in his 30s running around. No, absolutely not. And they believed. I mean, McConnell wrote about that in the Players Tribune, is that by the time they got to game 6, game 7, even though Halliburton was hurt and they got blown out in Game 5 by the Thunder. And I mean, everyone was writing them off, and he was like, we'd won so many games, we just believed we were going to win. And you saw that in the Knicks series. I mean, they were down 9 points with a minute and a half to go, and Halliburton goes nuts and makes the crazy shot. And I think after a while, you just start going, this is just kind of meant to be. You know, like you saw it in the Brewers-Dodgers series over the weekend. The center fielder just drops the ball. I mean, you know, and you just start looking at that going, maybe it's destiny. You know, maybe it's just meant to, which is absurd. It makes no scientific sense at all, but maybe that's why we love sports, is because stuff like that starts to happen and you go, well, you know, like there's a Ole Miss, you probably don't keep up with college baseball very much, but a few years ago, Ole Miss was the last team into the NCAA tournament. They barely got in. They got in because the committee decided that they were more worthy than NC State of the final spot. They got a 3 seed, sent to Miami, basically banished to be defeated. And they played really, really well. They kind of caught every break humanly possible. The whole deal, they end up winning a national championship. You know, that's the team. That's the team that will be remembered in Oxford forever. And it was not the best team that, you know, they've had in the last 10 years or so, but it's the one that got it done. And I don't know, the Brewers, over the last few days, the Brewers have kind of felt like they could be that kind of team. They're interesting to watch. They're as much as I don't like them because I'm a Cubs fan, they're fun to watch. They play the game kind of a different way, and they look like they're hard to prepare for.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to play them in a series because your pitchers just have to be on edge because they are always doing the threatening, and you see guys sometimes start to get a little distracted. You know, look over the extra time, throw over the extra time, and I do think that it's like a little thing, but there's so many little things in baseball, and I do think it makes it harder to pitch to more outs when you're just like always got it on your mind of like, oh, am I going to let this guy going to get to second and then another bloop through the infield and that's a run? Like I think it weighs on teams over a while. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're going to keep it up. I think they're in Seattle right now. They won again. The Cubs series in like a week. That's going to be a real big one for both teams. So that'll be a fascinating one.
Four games in Milwaukee, I think.
That is going to be a big 4 games for. Is that before? I think it's before the deadline.
Yeah, it's right in front of the deadline. I was actually reading something the other day. The Cubs have right now a hole in their rotation, and there's like 6 pitchers that they're scouting right now. All 6 of those guys are scheduled to pitch on that day. So who knows? I mean, it could be crazy. It'd be a lot of fun. And it's baseball pennant races are a lot of fun. All right, I told you I wouldn't ask you about the Big Ten. I'm not. I am going to ask you one Wisconsin question. Are Wisconsin fans already losing patience with Luke Fickell? Is this a big season for him?
Yeah, I think it really is. I think it sounds like they might run a bit more, and I do think it's funny with Wisconsin college sports because it always seems like we're stuck in the past, football and basketball, but they would usually get results even if they did seem that way. And there was so much hype early, and all the commits and all the tweeting. He tweets the video every time, and they recruited better than they've ever recruited before. But it hasn't gotten them anywhere. But I think most fans are like, well, you're going uphill. They're obviously not on the level of some Big Ten programs, and obviously even outside of the Big Ten, there's better programs still. And it takes a little while, even in college, even with the high turnover, to really build your team, your culture. I think this is a huge year. I don't know that they'd fire him. I think they're a very patient program with almost everyone they've had in to do a job. But I do think for the fan base side, at some point, you've got to see a little better result than just like, you know, we have a couple okay wins and then we run into Alabama and the game is over by middle of the second quarter. I'm not saying you're going to beat Alabama, but you'd like to at least be a little bit competitive. And they just looked like they're in different conferences, looked like they were in different divisions in that game and some of the others in the big ones. So, you know, the bar is not really high for Wisconsin football, but I would love if they could at least push a team. Like, can we have Ohio State or Michigan like in the 4th and make them sweat a little bit and not just be the doorstop when we see a big program? That's what I think we're at least hoping to get there this year with Fickell, just because it sounds like he's done what he wanted to do on the recruitment side, but now it's okay. How does it translate to winning?
Ty, as always, thanks so much for spending some time. Really appreciate you being here on MPW. I'd love to do it again as we get maybe into the basketball season. People get mad at me for NBA content on, but they'll just have to get over it. I enjoy the NBA. It's July. Leave me alone. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Neal, for having me. I appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. That was Ti Windisch. Covers the Bucks, based out of Milwaukee. Gyro Step Pod is the name of his podcast. So check that out when you get a chance. Thanks to he, and also thanks to him, I should say. Mom, if you're listening, I apologize for the grammatical error. Thanks to him and Rylan Stiles for their time today. I'm talking to Ryan Brown of the next round a little later this afternoon. I'll have that to you hopefully in a live stream on Wednesday, but we'll see. Got some stuff going on at my house. Might be too loud to do a live stream, but we'll figure it out. I'll get that to you. So we'll switch back to college football. Jeffrey Wright will join on Thursday. We'll have McCready and Siskey on Thursday afternoon. And then we'll do a hand raise guys on Thursday night, where you guys kind of determine the topic of the show, and then Chase will be back first part of next week. And we'll it'll be practice week as the Ole Miss Rebels report. I'm told they're reporting on Tuesday, practicing on Wednesday. Media day is either Wednesday or Thursday of next week, I believe. I'd guess Wednesday, but some of that could obviously have been impacted by the tragedy, the death of Corey Adams on Saturday. So that certainly have changed things. I don't know that. I'm literally speculating, but we'll get all that information to you here at MPW Digital. Chase will get it to you on his site as well. So until then, again, thanks to Rylan, thanks to Ty, thanks to all of you who listened, who participated in the stream. And we'll talk to you again Wednesday.